Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for the school committee meeting on October 9th. Tonight we are here at Cookland Middle School. Could I ask everybody to please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is approval of minutes. Everybody on the committee should have in front of you the minutes from our September 25th meeting, as well as the executive session minutes from that night as well.
We also have executive session from Monday night.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, we do. Sorry about that. And we also have executive session from the safety executive session we just had on Monday.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
I'd like to separate them out, as some of us were not at every meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so motion to approve the September 25th regular session and executive session minutes.
Seconded.
Any further discussion on those minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
And then a motion to approve the executive session minutes from the meeting of Monday, October 7th.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion on those? All in favor?
Aye.
4 and 1
Abstain.
abstention. Okay, thank you. Dr. Thompson, do we have any correspondence tonight?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, so next is warrants. We do have a number of warrants to sign tonight. They are on the bookshelf behind Dr. Wyeth, so I ask the committee to please sign those before you leave. But to share with everybody the amounts, we have 3 payroll warrants. The first in the amount of $115,479.20. The second in the amount of $1,515,040. Sorry guys, I don't feel so well tonight. Obviously I cannot read numbers when I have a migraine. I have somebody else to read numbers tonight for me.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dave.
Continuing, payroll warrants in the amounts of $1,515,458.67. Payroll warrant in the amount of $101,119.10. Accounts payable in batches in the amounts of $9,046.62, $13,591.48, $33,810.29, $3,348.30, $14,169.91, $5,590.99, $63,834.67, $4,768, $2,280, $782.42, $129.88, $108.07, $95.16, $4,721, $2,591.20 for a grand total of $1,890,924.96.
Thank you, Mr. Gadania. Any conversation or discussion about the warrants in front of us? Okay. Moving on to public forum. At this time, I invite anybody who is here to speak before the committee in public forum. Seeing none, public forum is closed. And next we are moving on to announcements. Dr. Thompson, announcements this evening?
Yes, well, we did announce on the 26th as soon as it was made official, but we're very proud to have with us and in our district a Blue Ribbon School. The Prescott School was named by Secretary DeVos as a Blue Ribbon School on the 26th. So I would like to invite Principal Riley up, and we have a good representation of some of the incredible educators we have at the Prescott School with him as well. So if he could explain exactly. I know we did a little bit on the 26th and 27th, but another opportunity to say thank you for all of your fine work, everyone here, and really we're very, very proud. So.
Sure. If we could bring 15 more chairs up or so, that'd be great. A lot of people behind me, maybe the camera can focus on them instead of me. So good evening, Dr. Thompson, members of the committee. Thanks for inviting the Prescott team before you to share our recent National Blue Ribbon Schools designation. I'm here tonight with members of the team, and I intend to give a brief overview of our application process. And then the team is happy to take any questions. I hear they want some tough ones. In January 2019, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, invited a number of schools to submit an application for blue ribbon status. The Prescott team accepted the nomination and formed a committee to gather historical information, examine student and teacher data, and compile a compelling story about the Prescott. The application not only discussed what successes the school has had in the past, but also the ideas and initiatives that are forward-thinking and innovative that we're currently implementing. The committee met for about a month and a half and submitted our application at the end of March. We had a huge representation from our staff. Probably 75% of our staff worked on the committee. From there, the application was reviewed by DESE, and we were provided small bits of feedback throughout the summer on how to adjust some of the components of our application. We were excited to learn earlier this fall that we would be recognized as one of 6 Massachusetts schools and 360 schools nationwide to be designated as a 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. As I shared in my announcement to our community, there isn't one thing that makes a school community excellent. It's not just the great teachers, it's not just the committed families, it's not just the supportive district administration, but it's a perfect combination of all of these elements and more coming together for an extended period of time. This recognition is a testament to all of our current and past staff, teachers, and principals, including my predecessor, Brian Killian, who set an innovative and forward-thinking tone in the building for 14 years when she served as principal. The recognition is just one indicator that recognizes the amazing things that we can do for our kids when everyone works together. On behalf of our entire team, thanks for inviting us here tonight, and they would welcome any questions from the committee. If anyone else wants to join me up here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Riley, do you want to introduce your staff that you brought with us?
So we have Ann King, 4th grade, Janice Elbosch, 1st grade, Liz Healy, 4th grade, Katie Lyons, Inclusion, Lindsay Bell, 2nd grade, Jen Marcotte, 2nd grade, Rob Marshalsea, 4th grade, Carol Thornton, head teacher and reading specialist, Maureen Condon, 3rd grade, Molly Hashi, 3rd grade. Did I get everybody? Yeah. So those are our Prescott team members here.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
No questions, Brian?
No?
I want to congratulate all of you, and I am obviously thrilled by this, but I'm not surprised because I knew what a wonderful school it was as my kids were going through the Prescott School, and I've been really pleased to see that the transition from Mrs. Killian to you, Mr. Riley, seems to have gone so well. I know that can always be tricky when there's somebody who's been there for a long time and they leave, and so I'm just so excited to see that whole school thriving.
Thank you.
You may have gotten off pretty easy tonight. With the hard questions.
Maybe I'll be back next week.
But congratulations, yes. And Mr. Riley, thank you for coming again. I think this is your 4th school committee meeting in a row. I was joking earlier, but I really think we need to get him like an honorary school committee badge.
Maybe just give me a week off.
Oh, okay. I don't think you're on our agenda next week, but I know you are the one after that.
All right.
But I
Thank
know
you.
many of you have to get to a PTA meeting, so thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Dr. Thompson, do you have any other announcements at this time?
I do not. I think we're ready to move on to appearance.
Okay. So now we're moving on to appearance, and our first guest tonight is Mr. Joe Collins, who is here to speak with us about the Green Communities Program. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the school committee, for having me tonight. I'm here to just provide a brief overview of the Green Communities Program and also seek your approval of a fuel-efficient vehicle policy. I provided a report of just a general overview of the Green Communities Program in your packet, as well as the fuel-efficient vehicle policy. The Green Communities Program is essentially a state program that was set up about 8 or 9 years ago. That's goal is to provide designated communities in Massachusetts with funding to reduce their carbon footprint by improving the energy efficiency of their fleets, their facilities, and anything else that consumes energy at all. Or they also have the option of using renewable energy to improve their carbon footprint. In order to begin receiving grant funding through this program, you have to complete 5 criteria and also basically promise to reduce your energy consumption by 20% over 5 years. We've already completed 3 of the 5 criteria, which are planning or building code related. The planning department's worked really hard over the last year to get those all adopted by town meeting. The remaining 2 criteria are an energy reduction plan and a fuel efficient vehicle policy. Both only require the adoption of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. The energy reduction plan, which we're currently working on and we plan to bring to the school committee and the Board of Selectmen in November, is essentially a plan for the town to reach that 20% reduction goal in 5 years. The fuel efficient vehicle policy is basically just a policy that requires the town and the school committee and as well as everyone in the general government side to purchase fuel-efficient vehicles as they become commercially available. It's not necessarily a requirement for either for towns or cities to purchase electric vehicles immediately. It's really geared towards more. It's been a common practice for a lot of towns to recycle old police cars, which are incredibly inefficient. So it's really more of the goal to try to stop that practice and instead begin purchasing more efficient vehicles for the entire fleet. So if there's any questions about the fuel efficient vehicle policy or the Green Communities Program in general, I'm more than happy to answer those tonight.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Collins? Yeah, John.
Can you talk a little bit about the grants that we'd be eligible for if we sign up?
Yeah. Well, I know in one of the packets that I provided, there was a long list of all of the grant funding that have been provided over the course of the Green Communities Program. I know for a fact that the town of Arlington actually just reached a $1 million mark in grant funding from the Green Communities Program. Funding can be used for example, solar panels. We can use them to replace aging boilers, which we've actually already discussed about using that funding to replace some of the old boilers and the school system. They can be used to basically make the buildings more efficient by replacing windows, replacing vehicles with more efficient vehicles. Basically anything that would reduce our energy consumption or first that do something to generate renewable energy can be used for, the grant funding can be used for either of those sources.
Yeah, sure.
I just have a question on, we have special education vans. Do you have a list of what vehicles that we would be able to purchase that would meet this criteria with regard to that?
According to the Green Communities Program, SPED vehicles are actually exempt right now.
Okay.
There aren't any energy efficient vehicles that are commercially available at this time. Down the road that might change, but at this time they're exempt. Actually, I believe about 72% of the vehicles in the school's fleet are currently exempt. So we're still quite a ways from actually really being forced to implement this, this policy.
And this would, as I read this, it would only apply to vehicles we own. For example, our large school buses, there's a service that we contract out.
Right, yeah, those would not be counted towards this policy whatsoever.
Okay.
For that 25% of vehicles that would fall under it, do we know what the price differential is when we go to replace it? So, I mean, there's a difference between, purchasing a Toyota Corolla and a Tesla. One is very energy efficient, but you can't afford the Tesla.
Right. Well, we haven't looked into that specifically. I know, actually, have the vehicles we currently have in the school department that are not exempt are, and this is actually, some of these are still on the fence. We need to do a little bit more research to determine because some of them might still be exempt. One of them is a Ford pickup, which is just, I believe, just an F-150, Ram 2500, and 2 Ford F-350s, and that's just in the school department. None of those have commercially available energy efficient vehicles. They might in the future, but currently we haven't found any vehicles in the school's fleet that would. I don't believe there's any vehicles that are absolutely and that would qualify as being non-exempt in the schools committee, the school's fleet.
A question about the sort of not the logistics of this, but typically when the school committee adopts a policy, it becomes part of our policy manual, and we have a process where it has to go through, we approve, and then there's like a waiting period where we get, people can feedback and things like that. But this is a little bit different potentially because it's a townwide policy that we would be approving with the Board of Selectmen. So I just wasn't sure if you knew how that works.
Yeah, and Joan and Dr. Thompson chime in as well. I wasn't envisioning this being in our school-specific policy manual, but am I incorrect in that?
Yeah, I would think it would just be a town policy that we're signing off on joining and endorsing.
Two different thoughts.
I'm not sure how we would make sure that it gets followed if it's not. Would it go through so it would be like under purchasing?
Yeah, we come under purchasing, and all of our purchases go through our purchasing agent,
I'm asking
Kathy
that.
Carney. So, I mean, we don't, I mean, as far as the vehicles go, there are no, at least right now, there are not vehicles that would qualify, because either we have large pickup trucks that they don't have hybrid vehicles for, or multi-passenger vans, which are not hybrids either. And then the other vehicles we use are the school buses, which are not ours, so.
I'm sorry, I haven't caught the recent Board of Selectmen meetings. Have they voted on this?
Not yet. I'm actually bringing this to them on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just one question I have, under the criteria, it's attachment C. Just as I look through it, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me that we obviously can't replace vehicles that don't have a fuel efficient counterpart commercially available. My one kind of concern is it seems in terms of new construction, it would make sense. The high school is fairly energy efficient in how it was built. If we're building a new middle school, then that would be as well. But my only concern is if we do have to do things to establish an energy baseline and develop a plan to reduce energy use by 20% within 5 years, my only concern is if we do have to do things to existing buildings in terms of major construction, would that mean having to then bring them up to code if we do a major project? And I know some of our buildings are certainly not.
Just by chance, Mr. Riccardi is here, and I think he would be a person to answer that question.
As I understand this program, and Joe can correct me, there'll be about $250,000 a year that the town would have available to do things. One of the first things that we would like to do is the high school. Even though it is brand new, 9 years old, it's not LED lighting. And we bought through Mass Save 2 years ago 320 LED corridor lights to replace all the corridor lights to LEDs. Right now they're fluorescent. The ballast replacement costs $60. The bulbs cost $10 each. There's 4 in a light. So when that fixture needs to be replaced, never mind the labor, it's $100. We bought these lights for $20 a light from Mass Save. We just don't have the time or the manpower to install them yet. So part of my hope with this money is the first infusion of money, we could do a contract and bring in an outside crew that would just go right through the corridors and replace 320 lights to LED. The wattage reduction is 75%.
Wow.
So it's a huge savings. And I think from the school's point of view, it would also be looking at old boilers, like boilers we did the Callahan boilers 2 years ago, boilers at the Bulge, boilers at Oldham, Cleveland. It would be that kind of a thing that we would do to again, reduce our carbon footprint and become more efficient with those boilers. So I don't envision us doing anything that would trigger bringing buildings up to code. And this building is not part of the energy use in this building is not part of it because it's hopefully gonna be replaced in 5 to 7 years. So this, you know, we're not gonna put money into this building, given it's gonna be replaced.
Okay.
So does that grant then put strings on what we can do? So if we were to ever 5 to 7 years or whatever go to redistrict, I know there was issues with Callahan because we had received funding for the boiler there when we were talking about pre-override. So would this place any restrictions on our ability to utilize our schools in a flexible manner? Could we close a school that we had replaced a boiler at, for example?
No, I don't think that would be the case at all. I was actually going to add one of the biggest benefits of this program is the amount of savings that the town, not only the school department, but every department in town will see just from the reduced utility cost, especially with the school department having the largest number of facilities as well as probably the largest square footage of any building. The school department will see the biggest benefit from this program. I don't think there would be any stipulation on what other funding would be used if we're using the Green Communities funding for, let's say, a boiler in one school that we had previously decided to perhaps use, override funding for that.
You think or you know? I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but there's a world of difference between you think that it won't have restrictions on it and you know for a fact that it won't have restrictions on it.
Good evening. My name is Paul Halkiotis. I'm the Planning and Economic Development Director. Last year, Tony Mizuko tasked the Planning Department with getting the Green Communities designation for the town of Norwood. And my assistant, Patrick Deschaines, has been working with Joe on setting up all of the criteria that we need to be designated. The state has, I think, twice a year openings where you can apply to be a green community, and we are working on a deadline that's going to come up in, I think, November to submit all of the required information to get that designation. The energy reduction plan that is currently underway will list, based on an inventory of all of the energy usage in all of the town's buildings. That inventory will lead to an action plan of things that our consultants are recommending that we do to reduce our energy usage across the board in the community. That plan, the energy reduction plan, is what we're going to be implementing. So there isn't any mandates that you have to do this or that, but our plan will be our guideline, our roadmap to go forward on what things we want to do, and some will be what we call low-hanging fruit, and Paul just described one of the most basic projects that all communities are doing in all of their municipal buildings and school buildings is replace the lighting with efficient LED lighting. Those are the easy kinds of projects. The more expensive or more difficult kinds of projects that will achieve a greater reduction in energy usage are things like replacing windows and boilers in the schools. And I worked on getting my community designated as a green community about 7 years ago. And I remember the elementary school where my children went to school had a boiler that was converted from a coal-fired boiler that was in a ship. And, we just couldn't believe it when we got into this and saw it. And so that was like, yeah, we got to replace that boiler because it just couldn't be efficient. So we will have an action plan. We will implement that plan, and it'll be an open process where there'll be a dialogue on what things we think should be the top priorities. It's important to note that Massachusetts is the leader in the United States from this program. More energy has been saved and reduced from the Green Communities program than any other program in any other state in the country. And so this is not something that you should kind of overthink. This is really straightforward. It is a great program that's been very effective, and cities and towns across the Commonwealth have managed to save a lot of money over the years on energy and to become more efficient, greener, and doing what we need to be doing to reduce energy consumption in our community.
So this process began over a year ago?
Yes,
Yeah.
and you might recall at the annual town meeting last May, I presented some zoning amendments, and I explained that, that you'd hear more about it as we went forward with some of the other requirements. So we passed zoning that had definitions for what renewable energy is and renewable research and development is. And we have zoning districts in town where those uses are allowed as a matter of right. They don't require a special permit from the planning board or the board of appeals. So those were some of the criteria that we've already checked off those boxes. We're working on the most difficult one right now, which is that energy reduction plan. And the adoption of fuel-efficient vehicle policy is one of the easier ones that we're taking care of. And we're just trying to wrap everything up so we can get it into the state in November so that we can get that designation.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm fully in favor of a green projects plan. I believe that my question is not overthinking to know if we're going to end up with restrictions on our schools within 5 to 7 years, and so I'd like to have an answer to that question.
That's a valid question. In the information that you gave us, it says for next steps that you're working on the ERP and that that'll be presented to the school committee and board of selectmen. When would that be?
One of the meetings in November. Yeah, our deadline is November 22nd. So if we don't have the ERP and the fuel efficient vehicle policy adopted by then, we'll have to wait another full year before we can apply again.
So we meet once in November. That's on the 20th.
Oh, once. Oh, the 20th? Okay, that's fine.
So, is it possible if you come back on that night that we can vote on whatever you need us to vote on at that point? Or do you need something from us to move forward in the next step? Just to clarify.
Both could be adopted on November 20th. We just need both adopted before November 22nd so we can submit that to the DOER.
Okay.
I don't think that it's a requirement for the school committee to actually adopt the energy reduction policy. The thing that we're here for tonight is to ask you to approve the fuel-efficient vehicle policy. We will definitely send over the energy reduction plan, and we can make ourselves available to answer any questions about it. But that's not something specifically that the state requires that you take a vote to adopt.
Can I just, and I don't know whether this is going to be a complete answer to your question, but the problem with the Callahan boiler is that we have reimbursement from the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Correct.
Through that. So we could close the Callahan, we just have to pay back all that money. So,
I'd just like to know if that same
Right.
contingency exists here.
right, but
all I'm
that's an MSBA thing when you go through their program. I don't know whether there are restrictions here, but that was
That's exactly my question.
right.
I actually think if we close buildings, we'd be helping to get to the 20%.
That would be the easy solution.
I don't think that would be the criteria the same as the MSBA.
So done, we'll just close a building.
So where are we putting all the kids' ball? Yeah.
So somewhat related to this, but outside of our immediate school committee, Norwood, if we put up solar panels on our homes, we can't really sell the power back to our utility? Is that the case currently?
You don't
You-
get reimbursed.
We don't get reimbursed.
Well, actually, Norwood's a little bit of because we have a municipal light department.
Right.
The amount of money that we would be paying back to is just much lower than if you lived in, for example, if you live somewhere where you were a customer of National Grid, you get more money per kilowatt hour. So it usually isn't necessarily as doesn't make as much economic sense, but you can technically sell it back. It's just you won't get the return on your investment as if you lived in if you had National Grid as your electric provider.
Oh, see, that's news to me. I mean, I would be in favor of that for my own home, even if I got something back, so.
Does Norwood Light have any solar panel fields that are?
We don't.
Just don't.
We're in the plans to have one, right?
So, the light department is in the process of issuing a request for proposals to construct a solar array on the landfill. And so they're gonna release that fairly soon, and companies will bid on setting up that solar array on the landfill. We have also, we applied for a grant connected to that project, didn't get it, but the grant round reopened, and we're looking at applying for a grant to establish an array of batteries. That, when I'm talking about batteries, I'm not AAA, I'm talking about tractor-trailer size lithium batteries that could be charged by solar energy from the panels on the landfill. And right now, the Savage Center and the Senior Center is one of our emergency locations to go to in the event of an emergency. And there is no backup power supply. We don't have any generator there. And so it's a shelter, but the power goes out, there's a problem. And so the grant that we applied for was to, the light department would establish a direct circuit between the landfill, solar charging off of the landfill to this battery system. Would be a circuit going to that building, and that would power that for a time period in the event of a power outage. So we're actually going to be meeting to talk about resubmitting one of these grants, and that would help provide resiliency in the event of a power outage, more frequent storms that we're looking at related to climate change. And it's a location where some of our most vulnerable populations go to, the seniors and the kids. And so this was a project that we're going to probably resubmit and see if we can get that funded by the state.
Yeah, Maya.
So I just want to clarify that the matter before us tonight is just approval of the fuel-efficient
Yes.
vehicle policy. So really, what I'm looking for is for you, Dr. Thompson, to tell us, do you feel that your administration has had enough time to review this? Are we comfortable with the Transportation Office and Buildings and Grounds? And do you recommend that we approve this? Or do we need a little bit more time to study this?
I think we could probably have that for our next meeting in October.
Okay, so then a motion to table.
Right. Is there a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is 23rd, right?
So I believe we're going to switch the agenda just slightly and have Dr. Frazek come first, only because she has students with her. So Dr. Gallagher, next time bring students and we get you on Zoom.
They're older, they can stay up later, so. I should always get to go first. All right, I'm going to have all my students come up forward. So first of all, welcome everyone to the Kokoda Middle School.
Thank you.
This evening. We've been spending a lot of time, well, I obviously spend a lot of time in the school, but we've had a lot of visitors to our school of late. We had a lovely tour. You guys can come on in and grab a seat. Right. As we were doing a tour and taking a look at the building as we talk about perhaps making a new one. However, we've had a great start to the school year. One of the new exciting pieces of our school year this year was doing electives. And I have 4 students here with us today. I have Danielle Damadia, Emily Spadorcha, and Anthony Kavanaugh, who are all in video production with Mr. Russo's. And I have Daniel Gomez, who is doing short stories of science fiction and fantasy. And I thought, as opposed to my telling you about the electives, I'd have the students talk a little bit about it instead. So my video production folks, why don't you guys start, tell a little bit about video production, what you guys are doing, and what you think of it.
So far, we've gone and recorded some of our short videos to start off the year. I don't think we have any of those with us right now.
No.
So we were assigned to make like a day in the life of an object. So my group made day in the life of a hand sanitizer bottle. And we used our creative thinking skills to create a plot and storyboard for our movie. So we recorded it on our Padcaster, we only have one of in Mr. Russo's room, which is just an iPad with a couple camera attachments. So after recording that, we edited on iMovie and presented our finished project. Actually, we're presenting them tomorrow in class.
My group did Day in the Life of a Chromebook. Basically, when we started, we did notes, we learned the angles, we learned the camera shots. Then we made a script, and then using that script, we used a storyboard, and then from that storyboard, we started filming our films, and then we edited them.
My class, my group did A Day in the Life of a Croc, and we used my iPhone and iPad to film the movie, and then collaboratively in our group we edited the videos, and Mr. Russo's helped us out with some things because obviously we don't know everything. And we came out with a final project that our group agrees on and we're proud of, and it's been a fun few weeks.
I'd just like to say you heard it here first. Teenagers don't know everything.
Yeah.
Still
Daniel, can you talk a little bit about short stories, science fiction, and fantasy?
So what we do in short stories and science fiction and fantasy, we read short stories in science fiction and fantasy. Last class we did 6-word stories, which is where you write a story in 6 words. And we heard one of the stories, which was, I think it was Baby Shoes Never Worn. And it was supposed to be kind of a sad story about how a mother lost her child during childbirth. And we read a lot of stories we read a story about time travel and about how a guy messed up the future. We've watched a few cheesy 80s versions of the stories, and that's pretty much what we do.
School committee members, do you have any questions?
I have a question for both groups. So, what was your favorite 1980s cheesy movie that you saw?
My favorite one was the one about time travel because there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex and it was like 2 feet tall.
That'll happen.
And it looked like it was wearing lipstick.
Oh boy.
I mean, what good T-Rex doesn't, right? And my film production students, what do you guys draw your own storyboards? Do you use like storyboardthat.com? How do you do it?
We have like sheets of paper with grids on it.
Yep.
And then we kind of draw and fill in lines.
Cool. And do you add in like sound design elements
Yes.
to it?
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
I use the app iMovie. I'm not sure about the rest of our group, but like I kind of played around with the app before we filmed and edited, so like I knew some things, and I also used the app Video Star to like add effects and add audio and stuff. So
very cool.
Also about the storyboard, it was like you could make a 30 to 45 second clip, so it was only about 6-7 scenes, so it was like really easy to draw out.
Very cool.
So are you glad that we have electives at Coakley now?
I like some.
How has it changed your day from when you used to have the Mustang block and now you have the opportunity for electives?
I got really excited for the end of the day because of the electives, because they're much better than Mustang block.
Yeah, I like the electives a lot more than Mustang block, even though it was good to like get your homework done. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of reading and staying silent for 50 minutes, so like being able to do fun stuff with people you know and get to know is better than doing Mustang block. And so was like my other electives. Like last year I used to not like dread, but like dislike going to Mustang block, whereas this year I'm like excited.
Yeah.
Where I'm like this year I'm excited to go to video production class.
When I first heard the idea that they were getting rid of Mustang block, I thought, these people must be insane. But then
Listen to Anthony.
I want a bus. I want a bus for Pride Flights. Can we get that funded? We definitely
You're
need that
in
funded.
front of the right people. He was
Bus
like
for
me
what?
that he's asked me all year long, how many Pride points is it for a bus? And I keep asking, what are you going to do with the bus? I've not yet gotten a straight answer.
So, when I first heard this idea, I kind of thought I was a bit upset because I tended to do my homework during Mustang block, and unlike most people in my classes, I enjoyed reading. But then the first time I went to my video production class, I was very happy, and I was expecting less when I first walked in. And my expectations were blown away.
I did not pay him.
Anthony, which elementary did you go to?
Callahan.
At the Callahan. Did you present to us before at one of the? I feel like I've heard you speak before. Maybe it was something not school committee related, but I feel like I've heard you speak
been
before.
in like plays and musicals.
Maybe that's how I know. Okay. Yeah.
So do you know what your next elective is going to be? Or no? Or is this like surprise?
I do.
Well, you can check on Aspen. Like,
Okay.
you already have your schedule.
They might change though, because like they gave us the opportunity to switch out of the electives we were given at the beginning of the year to a new class, which is what I did with one of mine, and I'm assuming hopefully they will do it for semester 2 and term 3 and 4. So we could always switch out, but there isn't some electives are too full, and there's not like a bunch of electives to choose from when it comes to switching out of it, because most people like the gym classes and like I don't know.
Yeah, we have some very popular ones. So
Yeah.
we did, so what she's talking about, we did an add drop period for the first week, so that if students wanted to, they could come down. We started with 8th grade, and I think we have all 8th graders, 8th grade 7th?
I'm in 7th.
7th, so they kind of got first choice, so if you're a poor 6th grader, your choice is, I was just standing there talking, there are no gym classes, there are no cooking classes. If you want this class, don't come, because no. So, progress, but it went pretty well for a bunch of administrators who have never done add drop, and I'm sure their guidance counselor's cackling at us somewhere.
So I just wrote a 6-word story for you. Middle school students are very impressive. But are there other comments or questions from the committee? Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. And thank you to my parents for driving. Unlike high school, my students cannot get here on their own. Before I move on to the school improvement plan, did anybody have any other questions about electives that I'd be happy to answer?
How many electives do you have currently?
It's a great, I highlighted it here so I could,
Oh.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We have 27. Plus we offer RTI in math and ELA during that time period, plus we do offer study skills. So most 6th graders have 1 study skills and 1 elective, which sort of happened by happenstance of having to find spaces for 741 students, or wherever we're currently sitting at. But we kind of like it because 6th graders, it's helpful for their transition. So they still kind of have a fun, and how that works, we were on a 6-day rotating schedule or every other day is different. So 3 days a cycle they have an elective, and 3 days a cycle they have study skills. So kind of gives them a nice mix. And then 7th graders and 8th graders kind of had the choice of doing study skills, which a lot of them did because, you know, as they said, they do kind of like to have that opportunity to get homework done at the end of the day. So.
Would you like to share your improvement plan with us?
Sure. So I'm assuming everybody has a copy. I sent one over. So obviously the first part of the plan is the demographics, and been filling in the last pieces. I will say the DESE does not have our newest demographic data up as of yet, so anything I would have put in would have been exactly the same as what we had for last year. So if you're wondering why there are some holes there, that would be why. As you can see, our MCAS scores, we had some areas that we like, some areas that we definitely need to do some work on. I know we're going to talk a bit more about that at a future meeting when we talk about MCAS improvement plans specifically, but I have the generics in there. And then the first part is the progress report on our last year's plan. We met a lot of our pieces. A few pieces got moved on to the new plan, which we fully expected. Although we do a 1-year plan that we present here each year, is actually part of about a 3 or a 4-year plan that I have in my office that we kind of take pieces out of, and each year the plan slightly changes as it goes along, as I can imagine you would know. Our first goal had been social emotional capacity and increasing that. We've fully implemented SEL. We were developing our PBIS program. We were adding some spirit activities and things along those lines. Our second one was technology integration, which was really sort of focused around the one-to-one Chromebooks and increasing my teachers' capacity for using those in meaningful ways in the classroom. And then the third one was improved educational programming, where we really started looking at co-teaching as a special education model, increasing rigor, adding keys to literacy, and kind of starting some of those pieces. Any questions about last year's plan? All right, on to the new plan. We have 3 big goals. 2 are carried over from last year. 1 is brand new. We do feel the technology integration goal has really been met. We are off and running, and I don't know if Joe Kidd is still here, but he'll tell you how high in demand he always is here, because my teachers are constantly using technology. So we really feel we met that goal, and it's really embedded into part of our culture and part of our professional development. So our first goal is the same as it was before: improving students' social and emotional capacity at the school to create a positive, safe, and supportive and learning environment. Our second goal is to improve student writing across all content areas, and our hope is to, well, always to improve our MCAS scores, but also to improve our students' overall achievement and preparedness for high school and beyond. And goal number 3 is to implement the improved programming for all middle school students that provides engaging content, rigorous material, and relevant skills. And that our hope is to eventually, over the course of the next several years, really connect it to the career and college pathways and innovation at the high school, so that we're creating really a 6-12 model and really, obviously, a K-12 model. And then we can dig in a little bit into each of these. So for goal number 1, I think one of the biggest pieces is that we have rolled out our positive behavior intervention and supports. I call it PBIS all the time, and I forget that other people don't know all the acronyms that we have. What that meant was last year was a planning year, and this year we really rolled it out. So we have, as you just saw, pride points are a big piece of it. So we have what's called a matrix, and it defines the expected behaviors we want kids to engage in everywhere in the building. So it defines what are we expecting in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the cafeteria, in the classroom. And all of those are stated in positive ways. So it's not don't do this and don't do that. It's what do we expect to see you all doing down in here. And the pride points are tied to that, and as we see kids doing those things, we give them a pride point for it. And I'm truly excited by the fact that we've run out of pride points 3 times already, and we're making them in batches of, I don't know, it's 500 pages times 8 tickets apiece. So that means that teachers are really using them, which is great. And our biggest goal now is figuring out ways for kids to spend them, some of whom don't want to. Some of them have a clear plan. And I keep going, I do have a lot of buses over there. Could make that happen. But we do, we've started doing some little things. We do music in the cafeteria on Friday, and for a pride point, you can choose a song. Teachers they do a lot of it in the classroom, like sitting in a favorite seat, or some of the other ones that they had. Sitting in the teacher's chair is always a big one. We use lots of little things like that. And then the second piece of it is that we really sort of talk about, it does not eliminate the need for any discipline. I'd love to say it does, but 11 to 14-year-olds are 11 to 14-year-olds, but it makes us be more consistent. So when we are talking about discipline, when we are disciplining kids, we have what are called both minor and major infraction forms, and minor forms are things that happen in the classroom, and a teacher just sort of documents it so that when it does come down to the office, because we have a chronic behavior, so one thing we're trying to do is teachers kind of dealing with more of those individual behaviors, and how do we deal with them? Like, well, we always, and we kind of did a flow chart. Well, the first thing you do is you talk to a kid and you figure out why, and then the next thing is you kind of have a warning and you point out the expected behavior and what it is that you want to see happening. If it does get to the point where like that intervention is not working, then kind of go to the next one where it comes down to us. And it might come that we come up with a plan, or even if it's sent down to us, we now kind of have all this data. So one thing that kids will tell you when they come down, and the research shows this, is they don't have any understanding of cumulative behavior. So, and I know this from 7 years as an assistant principal before I came here. Kid will sit down and say, I don't understand why I'm down here. I just did this today. And if you're kind of sitting there and you don't have anything, you're like, well, you kind of try and talk it out. And I go, well, let's look at September, because I've got something here in September, and let's talk about that. And then you talk about the next one and talk about the next one, so that they then do try and start to kind of build some of that understanding that this isn't about what happened today. This is about a series of behaviors that have grown, and what do we need to do, and how do we work this back out with them. So that's probably one of the biggest pieces that we've kind of put in place. And
You could just, I know PRIDE is an acronym, and I know maybe some
Oh, I'm
members know,
sorry.
but if you could
Sure.
explain what
If
PRIDE
you, I don't know if you saw our banner when you came in today. We have two beautiful new banners. PRIDE stands for prepared. Now, so you're putting me on notice here. Prepared, P for prepared, R for respect, I for integrity. I will tell you that took a lot of explicit instruction. D is mindfulness, so kind of the D stands in the middle, and then E is for engaged. And that kind of helps us define what all of our expected behaviors are for kids. I guess maybe I'll stop there for a second and just say, do people have questions about our PRIDE program?
Can you take pride points away? No, once you
Nope.
have it, it's yours. Okay, that's
No,
fine.
that would be the same as saying I did something good and somehow it can be undone, and it can't.
Got it. That's excellent. And I love the idea of other things. There's no physical rewards for things. There's no like actual buses. I'm being facetious, but what?
For most of the stuff is we do things. We try and offer things. We will have our Pride Point store, which is like pencils and little, and CMS swag, and all the kids are telling me they want earbuds. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go find some earbuds. So we do, and we do have some sponsors for that. We sent out letters to the community, and we've had 3 or 4 different businesses that have donated stuff. So, but that we'll do like maybe once a term or something like that. Have like a Pride Point store for kids to go in. But mostly we try and do stuff and fun activities. And as we kind of get our feet underneath this, you can do like a fun Friday afternoon, or so that kids, you can do it by grade, or you can do it like by number of tickets. Kids who have earned a certain number of tickets, you can buy entrance into an event and things like that too.
So the kids are responsible for those tickets.
They are. They know that they are non-transferable. We've had that talk, and you'd be amazed. Okay, I have to tell you this funny story. So we found out that they were trading Pride Points for like food and snacks, and I was like, what? Like with each other. And at first I was like, okay, who are you? Like threatening, like, I'm going to give you these Pride Points, you better give me your snack. It was not that way. It was the other way. They wanted more Pride Points, and I'm like, so that whole integrity one? How are you making it? So it's a work in progress, but secretly I was kind of like, oh, they want the Pride Points, that's good. So we were kind of excited by that. So there's some physical pieces to it, but that's not, especially at middle school, like outside of my giving them, I don't even know, phones or data service. I don't know what physical stuff they would necessarily want from us too much. So.
Well, I know my daughter's hoarding them in her bedroom, so I don't know what she's saving up for, but she's saving up for something.
Maybe she's going on the bus.
I don't know. I'm gonna ask her now when I get home. What exactly are you saving these for?
It's really interesting. We did this at my last school as well, and there are some kids that they just like to have them. I had one student, he's like, can I do this with all of my Pride Points? And I was like, for 2 Pride Points you can do that, and then you got to pick them up afterwards. He's like, okay, and like in the middle of the classroom, he's like, like making rain with his points. So I was like, okay, so they come up with a lot of stuff, and that's why I keep asking them, too. It's like, what would you like? What is a good reward? What is something to work for? One of the next steps we'll start working on is kind of group group things that we want to work on. So the other piece of PBIS is collecting data, looking at the data to target certain areas. So on my PBIS team, the nice thing about Aspen is we do get a lot of data. Is there a particular time, a particular day, a particular type of discipline? We know that tardiness is a tough one for us. I think for obvious reasons that we're working on in other ways, but so kind of having a school-wide contest of which grade can have the least number of tardies in a term and they get extra recess or something along those lines. Or can we as a school completely reduce something altogether or increase our attendance records? So we're kind of working on that next phase a little bit too to hopefully get those pieces in. So.
Great. Any other questions at this point? No. Okay. You want to continue to take us through your plan?
Sure. We're continuing to work on our SEL timeline. We had 4 different aspects that we covered last year. We're doing another 4 this year. We did start with hello in term 1. I am going to be honest that I cannot currently think of the word that they are working on in term 2, but my guidance counselors, they come up with 2 lessons that are actually done sort of standalone lessons, and then we embed whatever it is. So what we did last year, I think one of the ones we did was honesty. And so we did 2 lessons on honesty, but then teachers also spent some time working like, how do I embed that into my curriculum so it becomes a piece of it? So continuing that work. We're looking some different ways to increase acknowledgements for students, like some academic things, even simple things like making sure that our honor roll names are getting sent to the newspapers so that kids kind of get recognized for those pieces. Something that we sort of thought about, because I know at the high school, like for sports and things like that, they can do award nights. We have intramural sports, so it doesn't quite work that way, and we don't necessarily have awards nights and stuff, so we haven't totally come up with that, but we'd like to come up with 2 events where we're really recognizing students' achievements in different ways. So it's not just academic achievements, it might be academic and sports and drama and participating in clubs and school government, and so that's one of the things we're working on. Our international parent group, Thursday is our second one. We did one last year, which was awesome. For our Portuguese-speaking parents, this one is again for Portuguese-speaking parents, just because we're like, okay, that was really successful. We're going to do one more, and then our second one, we're going to try and do 4 of those. Second one will be for Spanish-speaking parents. There's one for Haitian Creole, and we haven't decided how we're going to do the 4th one. One of the pieces that was really overwhelming when we started looking at that, we're like, well, how do we speak like a million different languages at one meeting? And then someone went, well, why don't you just choose one? And we're like, oh, that's a good place to start. Yeah, we'll do that. So I had really good success. So we have another one this Thursday. And basically, we kind of pick something that we think maybe some of our international parents or our non-English speaking parents might need help with. So we're doing Aspen. Thank goodness my technology integration specialist speaks Portuguese fluently, and so she's going to do a whole Aspen presentation in Portuguese so that our Portuguese parents will know how to access students' grades and access the portal and things like that. And then we do a question and answer series with myself, and Mr. Freeman and Mr. Greeley will be there doing that too, just so that they can kind of ask about any questions that they have for us. It was great. It was a really wonderful thing last year, and I invite anyone who would like to join us to come on down on Thursday. I think it's 6:30 to 7:30. So. We're going to continue to build on our school spirit activities. My school council is kind of working on that. We are continuing to embed and improve our cultural relevant teaching, our cultural proficiency. We have some professional development embedded in that, and continuing to do that work. Bringing in diverse speakers for student enrichment. We've had one the past couple of years. Our PTO is very much involved in that as well, that do everything from promoting kindness to talking about, peer relationships and all those different pieces. So some of our goals. And then last year, just sort of in general, we created more after-school clubs. This year, we want to focus a little bit more on clubs that support our minority and immigrant students, because we don't have any at the middle schools. And we think it's a sort of an underserved population that we can work on, especially with after-school things. So we're starting to work on that. Any questions about any of the other SEL topics that I just threw a million of them at you?
This isn't really about the improvement plan, but you kind of touched on it with the supporting minority students and an international family thing. You've seen a significant increase in your English language learner population?
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
We went from 17 at the beginning of the year last year. We have 44. Am I right? Alec has all my numbers. I don't know. 44 this year. So we have a significant new, and I think one of the things that is significant about that is not only are they English language learners, they are level 1 or level 2, which means that they are almost virtual non-speakers in English.
So I just want to clarify, that's 44 new students in addition to?
No, that's 44 total students.
Only
So we've
44 English as a language, foreign language, as this English language learners in the
That's
school?
learners that receive direct services.
Okay.
I think, and my number could be totally wrong here, I believe we have 73 that are being monitored.
Yeah, that's gonna come up a little bit later.
Yeah, but yes, so I would say it's our fastest growing, our largest growing population at the middle school.
Margot, with the international parent discussion group, do you have any support of community organizations? Is Impact Norwood involved in that in some
Yeah,
way?
Impact Norwood was able to come to the last meeting. They're just not able to come to this one, or Aubrey Cole. And definitely, absolutely, they've been super supportive. They've been great.
Okay.
So we expect to continue to work with them.
Great.
To do that.
And I know you mentioned in the strategic, or in your school plan, that you hope to move it to the district level in 2020, 2021. So
It's on the district strategic plan,
Yep,
so
it's
we're
part of
sort
the
of
district strategic
piloting a little bit here. I do also want to mention we've had very amazing support from local businesses. Mina's down the way has donated food a couple of times. Wegmans always. I can't. Every time you ask Wegmans for something, they give you twice as much as whatever it is that you asked for. And there's been there was a couple other community, the Juice Bar, they donated last spring as well. So just really, really great community support. And, if you go down in some of our Portuguese businesses and restaurants, you hopefully shall see some awesome signs that were made by our English language students in class that they made for the meeting. So as they tried to tell us that they weren't going to let their parents know about it. I'm like, oh, so even if you don't speak English, you're still a middle school student. That's fantastic. So, we found other ways to let them know.
it only happens across cultures.
Yes, it does indeed. So our second goal is, I think it was part of my improving programming goal last year, and kind of hold it out because I do think it's an area that we really need to focus on, is improving writing across the curriculum. One of the things that we are doing is creating a writing rubric that will be used across the entire school. So the ELA department has really been working on this, because while writing is different in different subject areas, the writing that's done in art is very different than the writing that's done in history or social or history or ELA. We still want to have a certain level of quality, a certain level of expectation, no matter what it is. So our ELA department has really been working on that, and our next step is to expand it across the school. So we're using sort of similar language, similar expectations. So when kids are writing, kids are writing. One of the hardest pieces, and I don't know if it happens at the high school as much as at the middle school, is kids think very compartmentally. I do math in math class and science. We were talking about this earlier today, and my favorite questions I've gotten from students when I was a teacher was, is volume the same as math as it is in science? I'm like, yep. Volume is volume is volume is volume. And it seems sort of silly, but when they learn things in those silos, they think that way. So one of the ways that we can kind of broaden those things and bring down some of those walls of those silos is to have some pieces that we do everywhere that we go. Build a consistent RTI ELA model. So now we have the time and we have the place, and we're starting to get the tools with the Renaissance program, not only for data, but it also includes an online RTI piece, so that there's sort of integrated pieces that students can do that are online, but it also has targeted instruction that a teacher kind of looks at, like, oh, okay, I see this group of kids didn't get this, I can print this out and we can actually work on this as a lesson plan. So really, it's been really nice that we actually have that time to do that, and it's an amazing piece to put in, so that if we have a kid who's struggling in writing or math, my first question is, are they in RTI, math, or ELA? As opposed to that first question being, should we evaluate them for an IEP? Because we don't want to go there. We want to go to what are the things that we can provide to students. Increase the number and diversity of our writing electives. They're doing more than 6-word stories in science fiction and fantasy. I know because I've seen them. We also have African American literature. We have 19 heroes and heroines of 1980s and 90s movies. They kept it with 80s, but there's 90s movies in there too. And they're doing some writing component pieces along with that. Although I think the last 2 times I went in there, they were watching a movie, and I was like, seriously? And they're like, you came at the same exact time on the 2 different sections. And I'm like, we promised. And they started sending me like all the PowerPoints and writing that the kids are doing. I'm like, okay, I believe you. Start to celebrate individual and school-wide growth for MCAS assessment scores, and I very intentionally put school-wide growth and put growth. We're not looking at how they individually achieve, but just that are we working to grow, develop, improve, and do all those things and do it school-wide. And we're always trying to balance the importance of MCAS scores, like, yes, it's a test and we're judged on it, and all those things are important, but it's not the end-all be-all. Student learning is the end-all be-all. But so kind of trying to find that balance and celebrating improvement, I think, is generally always a good idea. Next one is increasing rigor and engagement, and that's sort of our professional development theme for this year. We've started by defining rigor. We did that just the other day, and we're working on it in Common Planning Times as well, really looking at what is rigor, what does it mean, and what does it not mean. You know, we've already sort of established it does not mean more. Doesn't necessarily mean harder, but really getting to this idea of student thinking and student sort of that deeper dive into what we're doing. And we've been talking a little bit too about what are the things that are getting in our way of that. Is it a pacing curriculum that's really, really hard to follow? Is it not feeling like you can ever stray from that to dig into that? So that's kind of like our year-long theme. Every year I kind of have a theme that my teachers work on, and this is that for this year. So continuing to do that work. Last year, we sort of rebooted Keys to Literacy for teachers who had done it 4 or 5 years ago, and what I want to do is do a training for teachers that within the past 5 years have started because they would not have had that training. It is a really good program. Teachers are still using it that were trained in it 4 or 5 years ago, so that I think speaks volumes about the value of a program. So we just want to make sure we're kind of continuing that work as well. Training our Keys coaches that we get, they do sort of train the trainer type, or train coaches to come in so that we have teachers that work within the building that can go and work with other teachers within the building. I don't feel like I'm describing that very well, but do that piece. And then we are really focusing on our, I don't know why I didn't put math there too, because there's math there. Train our English language arts, our math, and our special education staff for co-teaching, so that we really start to have a co-teaching model. We started with a group of our 8th grade teachers and math teachers last year. This year we're doing a group of 7th grade special educators with ELA, and then we also are sending 3 teachers out to a train the trainer co-teaching program so that they can come back, and then we're going to continue to do some of that work, and some of it is sort of pushing and prodding, and some of it is giving them time, and then obviously explaining them. We did Lisa Decker both last year. We'll be doing Lisa Decker again this year. If you ever get a chance to go see her speak, she is unbelievably amazing and just makes you kind of rethink, and you're like, oh, I've been an educator for 20 years, and she said something that was like, oh my God, I've never thought of it that way. So that's really exciting, and I think, again, really strengthens our special education programming across the board. And then last but not least, sort of improving programming across the board, not just focused on writing. Or maybe that's why that one only had ELA. I should trust myself. We're going to, as I said, that co-teaching model, making sure that we're scheduling. You cannot co-teach if you cannot also co-plan. So that's a really important piece of that. Create an 8th grade career day. We had one in the spring last year, so my guidance counselors were really excited about that, so we're going to improve and expand that. Connect with the high school to create more opportunities to learn about high school offerings, that the 8th graders feel like they know what's happening when they go to next year and what their choices are for next year. this next one we've actually done. Create a transition and anxiety-based program to help students transition to CMS from hospitalization. So part of the override budget was a teacher for that program, and then we also are part of a BRIGHT grant that Jill Driscoll got for us, which added a 0.4 school adjustment counselor and a 0.5 paraprofessional, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing having the level of service that we have here. We went from one amazing school adjustment counselor, who I don't know how she has survived here, to 2.4. And we can do lunch groups, we can do work with individual students, it was amazing to me, I think a couple weeks ago, when I was able to say to a parent, so your child really seems to be struggling with something, and you know what, I think she needs more help than what we're doing. Let's get this, I have a school adjustment counselor that could probably meet with her like once every couple of weeks. I was not able to say that last year. So I know it's a little stray from there, but sort of in that same idea as that program. And then we are incorporating Project Lead the Way. This year, my computer teacher has added computer innovators and makers. I know I'm not saying it right, but it's one of those courses. If you see things when I'm posting it on Twitter, or Christine is posting on Twitter, about microbits and coding, and they're making garage door openers and things like that. So that one's already in, and then next summer we'll be training both my STEM teachers and I believe one grade level of our science teachers into additional programs. Project Lead the Way is project-based learning, hands-on science, STEM, biomedical engineering is one, and then I think it's called Foundations of STEM is the STEM one. And those, they get embedded into the work that teachers are already doing. And I almost forgot the last one. And then the last one, I just repeated it from the other one because really this look at rigor and engagement and how they're tied together, as again, it's really sort of a theme for the school. So I thought it went in both places, so I put it in both places.
Any further questions or comments for Dr. Sherwood?
Could you just tell us a little bit more about Renaissance and
Sure.
What it is and how you're using it?
Absolutely. I thought I wasn't supposed to present on this for a couple more weeks. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
so
it's
Renaissance.
actually number 4 on here.
Is it number 4?
It is.
Yeah, so I can pick up where you leave off.
Sure.
So go ahead.
So Renaissance is, if you recall from last year, we were trying out different assessment RTI tools for students. One of them was Renaissance, and we have chosen to go with Renaissance for this year as well. And essentially it serves 2 purposes. One is to assess students regularly, and you get instant data. So the first test that we'll be doing here at the middle school is later on this month, and the test itself for students takes about 20 to 25 minutes. It adjusts for them as they are in the test. So if they are answering all the questions right, it goes up. When they get some wrong, it goes down to try and really figure out where they're at. And then I think they said they probably said within minutes, I don't know, but it's like almost basically instantaneously when you're done, you have the data so that you know what are some of the elements that students are achieving, what are some of the elements that we still need to focus and practice on. So that's kind of the one half, gives us this incredible instantaneous data. The nice thing about Renaissance is that their data is very easy to use, it's very manipulatable. I don't know if that's quite the word I want to use, but in other words, you're able to look at it in a lot of different ways and play with it a lot of different ways. And then the other piece is a response to intervention model. So they have actually purchased Freckle Math, which is an online math, I can't think what the right word is for them. Just RTI program? I mean, like that's how we call it. Basically, it's individualized to the student. It adjusts to the abilities of the student, but it's practice-based. So it gives them opportunities to practice and go back and forth. And Accelerated Reader, which is very similar in terms of helping kids improve their reading skills. So.
Thank you.
The other piece, and I'm sure Dr. Wyeth will get to this, it's assessing kids to the state standards and projects where they will end up.
Nice.
And if you do these activities, they project where and the activities are designed to get them to proficient.
So sort of, I remember Maura saying this to me last year when we were talking about it, and you're like, so Margot, at some point you you get to guess where kids are in their progress. And I was like, yes, it's awesome. This program allows me not so much to guess, but to really have a better sense of where students are progressing. And more importantly, my teachers have a better sense of where students are progressing. And it's very teacher friendly, which I think is one of the key points as well. So I know they're always stressed when you kind of start something new, because they always want everything to go perfectly the first time. You should have seen them try electives. But once they get into it and see what it does, they're actually, a lot of them went to the training this past week that we had, and they're really excited to see what we can do.
So the Freckle Math is embedded in the RTA?
Yeah.
So it's the same Freckle Math that some of the elementaries use?
Well,
Right?
not really. This
No?
is the premier version.
Okay.
Right, it's the better
So
version.
the free, people
Okay.
were using the free version.
Yeah, so I've seen the free
Yeah.
version. So the
Right.
free version that I've seen, your kid's doing whatever math activity and there's a level. So if they don't get enough right, then you repeat the level, new math questions with the same level, and then you move on once they feel like you mastered it. So it's the same type of design.
Yeah, as Renaissance put it, they couldn't come up with something better, so they just bought something that was out there. And I was like, wow, you're a big company, I guess. Yeah, sure. So yeah.
Yeah, that's adaptive too.
Adaptive, thank you, that's the word.
A quick question. When you were mentioning like all the Project Lead the Way and Christina, who's doing a lot of the work, she's one of our Fuse Fellows, correct?
She is.
So that program and that connection that we have there is really helping our schools in many ways. Although Christina is wonderful, even if she wasn't a Fuse Fellow.
Christina,
she is amazing.
Christina is pretty amazing with all the things she does. I need about 12 of her. If you could work on that, that'd be awesome.
Other questions for Dr. Fraser?
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Nice work.
So now we get to welcome Dr. Gilligan and Mr. Rain. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. We are very excited to take you through the Norwood High School School Improvement Plan for 2019-20. We'll take kind of the same approach as Dr. Frazek did, and we'll jump in briefly to the demographics. You see kind of over the last 4 years, and just what sort of I think jumps out at the page is the changing demographic. We see a much more racially, economically, and linguistically student population, and that I think represents the value that brings to our school community and community at large. So you see that across the board. Some data that at the bottom right that you see that just isn't available yet, and so we'll have that as soon as the Department of Education does make that final data available. A quick review of MCAS and accountability. As you know, last year the 10th graders in ELA and math moved to the next generation MCAS. So what you see there at the bottom for ELA and math is not really comparable to past years. A different rating system, a different style of questioning, all online versus paper-based. So it doesn't really do us much good to try and figure out what the kind of conversion factor is, because there isn't really one. What you can do is look at how we did compared to the state last year, and I think we're really happy to see some improvement in terms of, if you look at how we did compared to the state previously and how we did compared to the state last year. We saw we were exceeding that state average in math and English. We continue to exceed the state average in science, which we have done for many years. Science was still under the legacy MCAS, if you will, so the old rating system, so that's kind of you can compare science, but you cannot compare math and ELA to previous years. What we are, as you may know, and I know that Dr. Wyeth is going to present a bit more on later, the accountability system for high schools was pretty complex and new, and this is the second year of the current accountability system. We saw a significant improvement there, and we're really happy about that. Not that accountability and MCAS is a be-all and end-all, but it is nice for our staff and students to get recognition for all of their hard work, and that is one small way that it can happen. So DESE overall looks at targets, and these targets are related to achievement, to growth, to level of advanced coursework, to attendance in school, to graduation rates, and there's a formula in terms of the value of each. And they set targets for each that relates to overall performance there, performance by demographic group. We, last year and 1 year, last year measuring the year before, meeting 22% of our targets. In 2018-19, we met 72% of our targets. So significant increase. I'm not a math guy, but I think that's a big jump. And so we're very, very happy about that. Likewise, you may recall last year we had this kind of not awesome label that said we were in need of assistance, which talked about our MCAS rates, specifically among our high needs English learners and economically disadvantaged students. We were able to increase those rates significantly to over 95 plus in each of those areas and shed that label. So no longer does it say that, instead it says substantial progress towards targets. So we're really happy to report that, and I know Dr. Wyeth will get into it in a little bit more detail later on, but we are happy with that. We'll do a quick overview of a recap of last year's school improvement plan before we jump into this year's. If you recall, last year we looked at a very similar approach. We wanted the Coakley Middle School and the high school to kind of mirror each other, and that should mirror the district strategic plan. I think you'll see that level of alignment. Looking at SEL and safety last year, talking about social, emotional, as well as physical safety. So we kind of broke that into two and looked at some of our school safety practices in terms of responses to emergencies and things like that, as well as implementation of and an understanding of the 5 core competencies in SEL, which we did at the district level and then at the school level, and looking for opportunities to embed that in the curriculum. So in all of those areas we're complete, and some are ongoing, and we'll get to that in a moment. Technology integration, as Dr. Frazier talked about at the middle school, again, focused on our one-to-one rollout last year, an extremely successful one-to-one rollout. We have 1,000 students bringing, not 1,000 bring them every day, but probably like 988 bring them every day. It's a pretty good rate. Kids are involved with it, kids are very used to it, and teachers are continuing to improve the ways in which they use that to enhance their teaching and learning in the classroom. Goal 3, last year we talked about the portrait of what at the time was called the Portrait of the Norwood High School Graduate. You'll see in a moment that name has shifted slightly. But last year was an opportunity to create a foundation and identify what types of skills would be the essential skills that our students would need to know when they graduate, that are transferable skills. These aren't facts, these aren't content specific, these are things that kids need to, and adults need to be proficient in and always be working on to be successful in today's world. So we set out last year to have many committees and do a lot of work among our staff and a design team made up of people across the district and community to really lay the platform for that, finalize the language, and propose some designs. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. And goal 4 was focused on career education and integrating career pathways at Norwood High School. And we were really excited that we spent last year planning, applying through the state. We received innovation pathway status for our healthcare pathway, which has launched, and we'll continue on, as you will see in this year's school improvement plan. When I came to you last year, I said, would it be okay if we talked about this in terms of 3 to 5 year goals? I had your blessing at the time, so you'll notice that many of these are the same category with different language and different action steps that build upon the foundation that was laid over the last year. So we'll jump in first to the social emotional learning, and you'll see that the language has shifted to promote a safe, secure, and emotionally healthy learning environment for all students in NHS through a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So whereas last year we focused on the 5 core competencies that make up social emotional learning and how to embed that in the curriculum, we're focusing on social awareness this year through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens to be able to build that at the high school. So this is really like an in-depth look at one specific area of SEL this year. I'll have Mrs. Durain kick us off with some of the action steps for Goal 1.
So we began this year with the whole staff participating in professional development with the Anti-Defamation League, and they came in and offered a workshop that was very well received on just all the isms and implicit bias and kind of being aware of everything around us and how we sometimes say things, even if we're not trying to say things a certain way. The staff really, I think, enjoyed the day. We had very positive feedback. They also talked about the World of Difference program that we are launching this year. We put it out to the staff last year and had 3 members of the faculty step up and volunteer to be the advisors for the program, and they were trained this summer. They went with the ADL to Vermont and actually went through the training, and we've spent the fall now advertising this program to kids and recruiting kids to apply to this peer leadership program. We had 60 applicants for 30 spots, which was awesome. I think we were really
In just grades 9, 10, and 11.
9, 10, and 11, because the seniors are leaving us shortly. Believe it or not, I know it's only October, but shortly. And we're really looking at a model where these 30 kids that start us off will then train not just the freshmen this year, but the next group of trainers as well, and become peer leaders in every sense. So that is happening now. The 3 advisors are interviewing students, and the selection process will begin. Then they will go through a series of workshops where they will get trained to be peer leaders and work with the freshmen this year to really work on creating a climate where all kids feel safe and included. So we're very much looking forward to that. And I think they're going to continue with us working with staff as well throughout the year. And the students will, as part of the World of Difference program, the students will also work with parents and the community later in the spring.
So we're really excited to kind of roll all of that together and have our students be the leaders about, with our staff support, of difficult conversations about bias, racism, ability, and many of the difficult conversations that our students need to be able to have to thrive in a diverse world. And I think that if we can help our students have those conversations by first improving our own ability to have those conversations too, we're really doing this together as a student and staff team. And we really like, one of the reasons we went with this kind of specific program, the World of Difference program, is because it does combine this student, staff, and community / parent realm of even helping our students eventually lead some conversations with community members and staff. And hearing that message from our young people is extremely powerful. So we're really excited about that. Throughout it all, we'll be monitoring the program and getting feedback. We're actually participating in a formal evaluation system through Boston University to be able to monitor the success and the change that hopefully this program will bring amongst our students. So through it, at the end of October, all of our students in grades 9, 10, and 11 will take the first round of this survey, asking them questions about these very topics, and they'll be able to kind of get a baseline there. That survey will also, by that point, we'll know who our student leaders are. It will also ask students, are you friends with any of these student leaders? Literally, so that we'll be able to have this kind of network approach to see the impact on students who are student leaders, the impact on students who are just on the periphery attached to student leaders, the impact of students who have received the curriculum from our student leaders, and potentially and compare that to students who are not, right, and be able to see hopefully growth and development in this area. So we're really, really excited about taking this dive into one specific realm of social emotional learning this year. Before we jump into goal 2, does anyone have any questions on goal 1? Or we can just go through and do any questions at the end, whatever the committee prefers.
Sure.
Okay. So goal 2 relates to Portrait of the NORA graduate. You'll notice the name change. And so we were asked also to give kind of a progress update. So we'll tie that into our school improvement plan, talking about that. Again, just to refresh, last year, this is tied into our accreditation process through NEASC and takes the idea of looking at schools, high schools always used to, and still do, come up with these core values and beliefs and 21st century learning statements. And they're really good words on paper, but that doesn't mean that a school like lives it. And so the idea behind a portrait of a graduate is to identify these skills that you live and that people know and you can easily identify. So with that, we have embarked on the 5 C's. Go ahead, Mr.
So we are starting this year by publicizing and promoting the portrait of the Norwood graduate, so kids and families know what it actually is and what the 5 C's are. Dr. Galligan has a really cool hashtag on Twitter. It's the 4 C's, the 5 A's, 1 team. 4 A's, 5 C's, sorry. 4 A's, 5 C's, 1 team. And that is something that we've all kind of adopted this year, and it goes out on a lot of communications. I don't think the kids quite know yet what they've all heard what the 5 C's are, but we haven't started, like Dr. Galligan said, to live it. So that's our next step. In a recent, before school started, we worked with the department chairs just to kind of roll this idea out with them about where in each area of the curriculum do the 5 C's currently live, what courses do kids start to build these skills, and what does that look like? So then the department chairs have used PD days already this fall to do that work with the departments and really start to identify places where the skills currently exist. And what does collaboration, for example, look like in a 9th grade Spanish classroom versus a 10th grade English classroom or an 11th grade sociology class? So there's a lot of great work going on there, and teachers have actually designed their goals around the portrait of the Norwood graduate this year as well.
So what you see in your packets, that you got the finalized language that the design team came up with as far as collaborators, creators, communicators, critical thinkers, and citizens. This kind of active language that losing kind of the noun of collaboration and putting like, I am a collaborator, right? The design team felt that that was most powerful. Students felt that was most powerful. And those kind of 4, I will call them sub-skills on each of those, are things that are evident pre-K to 12, right? This is ideally a district initiative that kind of starts here, and you know, if you walk into a kindergarten classroom, this is what we're doing. 5 C's, this is what they do. Like, we're learning from them right now. And what does that look like? Again, by grade level, by content area. And so last year was really the easy part of identifying that and getting together and kind of coming up with this language, a couple design options, which you see in front of you. And this year is the hard part of doing the work as teachers and educators, to be able to figure out, what does this mean for teaching and learning at Norwood High School and Norwood Public Schools in my classroom directly? I will comment that, part of the work of the design team is we looked at many student submitted and student designed designs for the portrait of a graduate. So what you see there are the kind of 2 finalists, and they were so good and so diverse in the way that they were represented that we have an elementary school version, which will go live soon, and a secondary school version, which will also go live soon. So the representing this, even coordinating the colors with skills. There was talk about this, what is this, synesthesia? So like something like, right, the association of feelings and emotions with colors, right? So there's a lot of thought that went into this, and coming from our graphic design students who went back and worked with the feedback that the design team gave them and said, yeah, we really like this about this one and this about this one. Can you 2 get together and maybe tweak it a little bit? So it was a cool learning process for them as well, and they're contributing to something that will hopefully live on in Norwood Public Schools for a long, long time. So we're really excited about that. As I said, the hard work really now begins, and it's already started with our professional development this year. Goal number 3 builds on the foundation that we laid last year for career education at the high school level, specifically with the launch of our Healthcare Innovation Pathway, affectionately referred to as HIP. So we have launched. That is the good news. We have 25 9th grade students officially in a state-recognized Healthcare Innovation Pathway this year. They'll be receiving industry recognized credentials. They'll be working on OSHA 10 certification very soon. They're also taking a survey course about careers in healthcare to expose them to the breadth and depth of all these careers that are there, not just doctors and nurses, but the thousands of jobs that exist in healthcare. They're doing that with 2 teachers, which is really a direct result of the override. We would not be able to do it at this level if it were not for that. And we're really being able to facilitate the student learning process through that, allowing us to get this off the ground all well, now planning for a second innovation pathway to launch next year.
So one of the things that we'd like to do is to establish a committee to oversee the planning as this all moves forward. But Mr. Brunt came to us with a awesome kind of package that he created about launching a second pathway in information, which is the communication pathway with media arts. So he wants to capitalize on a lot of the natural partnerships that we already have in the community with NCM and also with some other businesses in town. The proximity, I think, to Fox and WCVB. We're looking into possible relationships with Clear Channel to go out to like a radio kind of area. And I think, you know, one of the nice things for us is having gone through this process last year, we were able to act fairly quickly and put everything together to apply for the designation for the information pathway. Hopefully, we've submitted that at what, September, late September?
We submitted in September, phase 1. If you recall, last year, there's actually 3 phases to the application process. So we've gone through phase 1 with the Department of Education in hopes of being able to launch it next fall and have 2 operational pathways, each accepting about 25 students each year and building upon that. So the goal, hopefully being able to add a pathway a year for the next couple of years, and when fully enrolled, you'll see, you know, approximately potentially 30 to 40% of high school students enrolled in some sort of innovation pathway.
So we're excited about that, and looking forward to the next step, which would be, which I think will be a little bit easier this year, having gone through it last year. And I think that with this particular pathway and us being able to capitalize on things that already exist in the building, it's going to be truly amazing. So hopefully keep our fingers crossed that we get the designation and we can move on from there.
I should note that this really does partner nicely with each of our other goals. Each of these 3 goals you should see intersection between the 3 of them, as well as alignment with the district strategic plan, our NEAS goals, teacher goals, and so on. But one of the major goals and one of the reasons why we've taken this approach to move through it at the state level, even though it's a lot of paperwork, is the commitment to creating equitable access to these programs for students. So being able to find students who would not get this opportunity on their own and be able to provide them the structures and supports throughout a 4-year program to then graduate high school with several industry recognized credentials, an internship, and a full working knowledge of the career options in that field. Whether that's college, if you have those things, it makes you more competitive for college in the field you're interested in. If it's not college, you're ready for a very competitive job right away, or a certificate program right away, or potentially being able to obtain that certificate even while you're in high school. So we have, if you're at town meeting last night, Dr. Thompson talked, we've added Moderna as a flagship partner for our healthcare pathway. So we have Norwood Hospital and Moderna, kind of the traditional health care option, the biotech option, really kind of to expose students to the wide array of careers. And we've added a journalism elective at the high school this year, a more traditional journalism elective. We're looking at, you know, how does that piece together with a communication and information pathway. So we're really excited about the possibilities there and continuing to kind of chip away at this over the next several years. At this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions about the school improvement plan.
Questions, comments?
comment. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. It's nothing like when I was in high school, maybe like any of us were in high school. So super impressive. And I think it's so much more than just the facts. Because let's face it, everyone has to know basic facts, but you don't need to memorize things anymore. It's in your pocket on your phone. So, you know, education is much more about being adaptive and learning. And I mean, the portrait of the graduate is just absolutely awesome. You know, just basically making well-rounded people that can do anything, which is tremendous. So thank you for coming up with this. And
thank you for your support.
I feel like I got shortchanged.
You can come back.
Yeah, no, I'd jump back in a second.
I know you had started the Portrait of the Graduate partly because as part of the accreditation process and things like that. Can you just remind us about what the timeline is for that?
Yes, absolutely. So last November, we participated in what is called the Collaborative Conference. So NEASC, the accrediting body, recently totally revamped the way in which they do accreditation. So this is a much more inclusive process in terms of NEASC working with the schools to identify goals that align with their school improvement plan. So it's perfect because now our goals align with the school improvement plan and NEASC, right? So nobody feels like this is like the external pressure of NEASC. It's like, oh, here's some assistance to help us get where we want to get. We had the Collaborative Conference, which was a 2-day visit from a 4-person team, educators from other districts. And they came in, helped us identify and solidify these goals based on, they met with parents, they met with students, they observed classes, and they wrote a written report. We submitted a NEASC improvement plan, much like this, and I can give you guys a copy of that as well. On October 1st, we submitted that. And our bigger visit, in which a larger team will come for a longer period of time, is December 2020. And so the idea behind this is instead of NEASC, they used to kind of say, like, here's these like 50 things that you should try to work for, and we're just going to come and see how you're doing on them. This is, okay, we've worked together to identify these big, broad goals. We've already partnered together to identify them. You're starting to work on them now, and we recognize this as a 10-year process, but we're going to have our preliminary visit, our big visit, and then you're going to keep reporting back on how it goes. So we're in the beginning of that process now.
Great, thank you.
I just want to thank both of you for all that you do. I mean, everything you presented tonight, as you already know from conversations with me, fully supportive of. But I also want to make sure people know like how hard the two of you work, because I think you undersell yourselves sometimes. And just the Portrait of the Graduate, Dr. Galligan had invited me in the spring to be part of that committee, and I was at 4 of the meetings, but I know there were many more before you invited me in. And the work that went into this document alone, and Dr. Wyeth was there, I mean, he can attest, like the wordsmithing we did and the conversations we had as small groups and large groups, like so much work went into this. And the 2 graphics that you have in front of you, I think we saw like 25 of them, and really had like thoughtful conversation around what it was. And we like loved this one so much. That's why you see 2 of them, because everybody at the committee was like, this is amazing. At the elementary level, we were like, this needs to become a book. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but I still think it should. But I think your leadership and the way that you work together is so strong. So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you. And I also want to thank Dr. Frazek, because what you shared with us tonight, and I know we're going to see all the school improvement plans at the elementary level as well, but what the 3 of you shared tonight is such a strong testament to the community about why we needed that override, and look what we're able to do with those funds. Because something that's been so clear to me along with our staff is that if we give you the resources, you just go above and beyond expectations. I mean, you just got 1 pathway, working on 2, and you're saying, I want another one, another one. So you're just so innovative, and you care so much about our students, that I just wanted to thank all 3 of you for all that you do.
Can I just add to that? I only tried to hire people who are clinically, kind of insane and crazy and want to do this crazy work. So I want to compliment you on that. But the other thing I want to point out is the amount of buy-in in both places. Because when you hear people talking about this Portrait of the Graduate, it's not someone handed down. There is buy-in there. And the PBIS social emotional effort here at the middle school, and every effort here at the middle school, the buy-in and the involvement of the staff, and they're behind it, and that's why it's moving forward so well. So I just want to compliment both of these teams. So thank you.
Yeah, Mara, hi. Just a recommendation in terms of the information pathway. I just heard you all talking about WCVB and Fox, but something to think about is a lot of those jobs in terms of information media that are happening right now are through either universities doing their own branding and content, but also organizations and companies. So if you already have a partnership with Norwood Hospital, I'm assuming they probably do a lot of content areas, then that's something that you can piggyback off of, because I think in terms of media and film production, you're seeing much less of those jobs go to traditional media outlets. It's just not as much of a growth field anymore, so you might want to be looking at more of the smaller digital content creators.
Thank you.
I'm writing that down, Mara.
Well, thank you for coming tonight and sharing all your
Thank you
great
for
work
having
with
us.
us. Thank you. Had to check where we are on our long agenda tonight, but Dr. Wyeth, I believe you're up now to share a little bit more. I know we started to talk about the Renaissance, but did you have more to share with us about the assessment and intervention?
Yeah, so I'll do just a quick addendum to what Margot did regarding Renaissance, the program. No, you did a good job.
Could have escaped.
So, yeah, basically what we've done is we've purchased a product called Flow 360 for English language arts and math. And what, after the team sort of had a lot of conversations about the best way to implement this year with the funding that we have, we are focusing it on grades 3 through 5, all students, all schools, and in all grades 6 through 8, and then grades 9 and 10, a targeted group of about 200 students or so. Kids who sort of need the extra intervention support, which include a lot of students on IEPs, for instance, some ELL students. And also, we're going to pilot it at a couple of sections of algebra and geometry. So all told, that involves about 200 high school students. If this proves really successful and gives us data that we find actionable and helpful, then we will expand that next year. But we thought this was a very doable kind of chunk given all the other work that's going on and the funds that are available. So the Flow 360 includes basically two components. One is what they call STAR 360, and that is has early literacy component, a reading component, and a math component. And then there are two additional pieces that are available for use, which is STAR Spanish, so some of the testing can be done in Spanish, primarily for math. And then there's a STAR Custom where teachers can basically develop their own kind of assessments to support and supplement the program. We doubt we'll be getting into STAR Custom at any depth this year. We really want to get the core of the program established and implemented, which means doing the screening in October. Margot has set 2 dates. The high school set some dates, I believe, and we're going to be setting some dates in October with the elementary principals shortly. So in order to get that done, I have to really congratulate Joe Kidd and Stephanie Bowden in the technology office, because they did yeoman's work on the back end of this. It's not easy getting it all set up. Importing all the student class information, the teacher class information, student rosters, getting that all set up so that this can be done in a timely fashion. So they were a huge part of this implementation, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. The second part of it is a practice part of it, which is really where the intervention piece comes in. And so that's called the accelerated reader and accelerated math. And the accelerated math is really now Freckle, because they've kind of merged that together. And as was mentioned earlier, the STAR 360, the core screener, is adaptive. So it will identify the student's level pretty quickly, and then with that data, those reports will get generated And the teachers can then begin to say, okay, how do I want to group my students? How do I want to set up some instructional work for them targeted at their particular level? So that training for that process comes through the PD component of this initiative, which is a significant dollar amount. And so that involves coaching. It involves training the trainer. So we've identified about 25, 27 teachers in each of the school, about 3 to 5 in each school, that will be trained as trainers. So they will be our site leaders for helping implement the program and ultimately for helping teachers understand how to use the data and, in actionable ways. So this, it's a multi-step process. The first step is to get the screening data done, then to get people trained on how to use that data effectively with the program, and then sort of roll it out till you have a second screening in the winter. We haven't set that date yet. And finally, a third screening in the fall, in the spring. And at that point, you've got 3 major data points that you can begin to see any patterns, trends, and carry the work on from there. So we're going to have 6 coaching sessions per school. The train the trainer is 3 full days, 3 6-hour days. So that's a good chunk of time for our 25 teachers. Jill Milton and Stephanie West will be part of that, as will our department chair at the high school. John Casale and Teresa Drummy will also be part of those train the trainers. So, just in a nutshell, the cost for the licensing for this amount of work that we're doing this year is about $50,000. We've managed to bring some of that down. And the cost for the PD is around $12,000. So you get a sense it's about a $62,000 ticket, which is covered by the monies that were provided in the override. And next year, we're getting a cost proposal for what that will look going sort of with everybody next year. But it's going to be a lot more than $62,000, although the professional development piece will be cut down significantly. So what else can I tell you? Today we spent a lot of time, again, this is back-end stuff. What's part of the program that you have to do to set it up is to identify the preferences in the program so that the data that you get is consistent across schools, so that one teacher isn't sort of exercising this set of, say, accommodations and another teacher is exercising this set of accommodations. So we as a team, administrative team, sort of went through the product with the trainer and sort of identified, yes, what boxes do we want to check off as everybody's going to be doing this or not doing this. And I won't get into the weeds too much in that, but that was an important back-end piece of it that had to be done in order to get good data out of the system that's reliable. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess. There's going to be more coming as we do the training and actually look at the first set of screening data, which is what Margot referenced. That's when we'll probably come back to you and say, okay, we've administered the screening, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're experiencing, and go from there. So any questions about that?
Do you want to add anything to?
No.
Feel free to.
No, I think we did a training last week for teachers who had not done it before, primarily at the elementary level, and my special educators. My special educators are super excited about it because they really see the potential for using the data. And teachers that are going to be doing the coaching are really interested in how that works. I'm sending a group. So the one nice thing that Renaissance does do is all these sorts of free PD things that they send out to us all the time. So I sent it out to my teachers like, hey, does anybody want to go to this? All of my math teachers replied, and I'm like, I'm not teaching all your math classes. We're going to have to narrow this down a little bit. But so we have some that are going down. It is a PD essentially on how to use their data to really focus in on RTI and doing that kind of work with students. And having gone to one last year, I was like, it was really valuable, especially if you're already using the stuff. So there's those sorts of pieces that come along with the Renaissance as well, which is nice.
So when are these kids doing this testing? In class, out of class?
No, in class.
In class.
Each test takes, like the math is about 34 questions. So that was another thing we had to talk about. How do we want to handle kids that maybe, you know, say there's a fire drill or something like that, and kids, can they interrupt that 34 question sequence? And the answer is yes. And so we kind of had to go through all of those pieces. And the reading, it takes about similarly, about 20 minutes or so to do them. So anywhere from 20 minutes to 35 minutes to do either the reading or the math assessment. So it can be done in a little less than a class period. And it's all online. And the teachers will, get trained on sort of how to introduce how to take the test with kids. They've got an administrator's manual that'll be shared with all the teachers. So again, that's sort of communicated consistently and done consistently.
Margaret, I have a suggestion. Maybe the kids can use the Pride Points to send their math teachers out of class.
Yeah.
They might try. Sharing those ideas.
Or to frame that more positively, they can use their Pride Points to get Dr. Frazek to teach their class.
There you go.
This year already.
So, so the advantage, we already do, computer-based testing for, our state assessments. So that should be a fairly easy transition. But it is a new tool. The nice piece is that teachers will have data as compared to state standards, a set of, and a pathway to get kids to proficiency based on that. So that's good news, and it's going to be fast and accurate. We're going to be looking at replacing some of the district design stuff that we have with the system because it's faster and easier. One of the challenges is you give a paper test, you take 2 weeks to correct it, another week or two to figure out how to group kids, and all of a sudden you're into the next chapter. So this is much faster. You're not losing time to that. However, it is a brand new tool, and we are asking our staff to learn something on the fly. And anytime you implement something, you see a dip. They're going to be figuring out this year, but I'm really impressed with what and the attitudes they've had thus far, and I'm looking forward to this journey. But it is going to be something that it's a brand new tool. We're giving teachers tools to do good work, and we need to give them the space to learn how to use the tool and apply it to their students. And based on what I've seen here in Norwood and the quality of the teachers here, I have no doubt that another year or so we will be fast tracking this along. But we're gonna walk slow and support each other. So.
Yeah, just to second a little bit what you said there, Dave, was Lori Semino, our Director of Student Services, said her staff were really kind of pumped up about this tool. So
yeah, that's awesome.
They really see it as being a major benefit for them and their kids. So we did that, as Margot mentioned, we did a training for most of our staff on October 3rd, one of our PD days. So
right,
we're kind of off and running.
Right, and it doesn't replace good teaching, it informs good teaching.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the data aspect is huge, as I've just spent the better part of the past 2 weeks trying to get MCAS scores out of Edwin for everyone. And every single document takes me at least 10 minutes just to get, download, print, figure out, and then if I get the wrong one, which happens, there's another 10 minutes. So this is 2 clicks and you have it. So I'm really excited to not have to look at Edwin anymore.
I don't know if it'll totally replace the state assessments, Dr. Frazek.
It's not going to do that, but it means that I
No.
don't have to.
One component, just relative to that, is that this tool is supposed to be predictive of how students will perform on the state MCAS test. So that's a little further down the line once you've really gotten a good batch of data for each student. It can start to make those kinds of predictions. It's also supposed to help predict how kids will do on the SATs for math and ELA. So that it's a huge company, and they've got a huge database, and so they're able to draw some I've lost the word, but to intersect the data and kind of.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? While I think it's great that it can predict, are students told what they're predicted to get?
Well, that raises another good question, because we had a lot of conversation about what information do we want students to get. about, because it tells them their Lexile reading, their grade level, estimation, and a whole bunch of other data. And so we want to be very careful about not not giving too much data to students or parents for that matter. And so the parent piece, how much of this testing do we want parents to see? And we've put that on hold until we really get our feet wet with this before we just sort of broadcast the data to everybody. So the answer to your question is no, we don't want kids to be sort of pigeonholed by this one data point,
Right.
So, but we've got to be careful about some of the power of the tool. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Wyeth, for that update. I know we'll be hearing more about this as we go throughout the year. Does the committee want to take a quick break?
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
Seconded.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we will come back.
Yeah. Teresa, when we come back.
Welcome back to the school committee meeting. We do have a couple more presentations ahead of us, so stay with us, everybody. But Dr. Thompson, did you have any late agenda?
Just two quick items. One is, in your packet is the October 1 enrollment report. That has not changed significantly from the 9/27. It's only a few days away, but if you look on the second page, you'll see that there were two. If I could get the second page to open for me, that would be much easier. Thank you. The Balch had an addition of 2 students, but everything else in the district has stayed the same. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is I'd like to ask the committee to take a vote and support, or we're going to, as part of the Blue Ribbon Schools process, there is a professional development opportunity in Washington and the ceremony to receive the award for Blue Ribbon School. We are limited to who we can bring. We can't bring anybody. We can only bring the principal, the superintendent, and a teacher. So we have selected those. The budget would be less than $2,000. We would take that out of PD funds. If we did have the transfer later, we would address that at that point in time, but that is the plan going forward. So.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Mara. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So welcome to Mr. Bishop and Ms. Sheridan to give us tonight a transportation update and report.
Great. Thank you for having me. Basically what I did is just put together an overview of the transportation department as it currently exists. And I did want to bring to you a department overview. Currently, the department is responsible for all of the special education transportation for the Norwood Public Schools, both in and out of district. And we're also responsible for the liaison between Conley and Sons for the large bus transportation. Currently, there are only 2 of us in management in the transportation department, myself and Marie Shaughnessy. The department personnel, other than the management personnel, currently exists of 25 van drivers. I shouldn't say van and short bus drivers. 2 are currently on medical leave. And in addition to that, we have 16 monitors. The monitors serve on all of the small buses to the Willett as well as the elementary schools, and they also serve on the vans that have children that we're transporting that have need for monitor that's written into their IEP. We're always looking for additional drivers and monitors in this economy. As you can imagine, it's difficult trying to hire people for this kind of position. Department vehicles currently consist of 24 vans. We have 2 of them that are wheelchair vans that are currently in use on a daily basis. We had a 3rd that we lost back the first of the year due to an engine that seized. I remember saying when I first took this position in January that if we lost another van, we'd really be in big trouble. And fortunately, we do have 2 new ones on order. When I got the capital appropriation for replacement vans, we were trying to, at that time, decide whether to order regular vans or a wheelchair van. We decided to order 2 new wheelchair vans and keep the remaining 2 we have as spares, with the idea that a wheelchair van can be used in either capacity. It can be used in just regular student transportation or in the capacity of transporting children who need a wheelchair. We have 5 short buses that are only 2 years old. They're 2017 model year. 2 of those buses are configured each to take 1 wheelchair. And in fact, one of the buses on a daily basis does pick up 1 wheelchair child every morning. The transportation of students that we're currently involved with consists of 43 plus or minus runs within Norwood and also to other towns or communities. We go everywhere from Marlborough, Hanover, Dorchester, all the way to Natick, Stoughton. The list you can see there is quite extensive. We are also responsible for the transportation of approximately plus or minus 153 students daily. That's both the short buses as well as the vans. The vans, it could be 1 student on a van that's going to a place such as Marlborough, or we could have 7 students in a van that are on a route. We may go into Boston to pick up a McKinney-Vento student who's going to an elementary school in Norwood, and once they get back to the Norwood area, they pick up the other students that are going to that school. We also provide transportation for the lead students, overflow to the extended day program, the Little Mustangs and the preschool, Little Mustangs preschool, I should say. We do a lot of other things. We do transportation for the high school's friendship club, any and all of the task programs, and any field trips that we may be asked to provide. Most of the field trips that we do are again, groups that are smaller. The vans can take up to 21, not vans, excuse me, the short buses can take up to 21 children or up to 18 adults. So often we're called on by the high school to transport maybe some of the fine arts group, could be cheerleaders, it could be the girls' basketball team, whatever will fit on our vehicles. And of course, this is done at a much more reduced, much more economical manner than if we had to go out and hire, say, a Conley bus, a big bus for a small group of kids. When I took over in January of 2019, one of the things that, basically came to my attention was that we had so much that was really contracted out. I mean, all of a sudden, I was given the bills to sign, and all of a sudden, I'm looking at the bills saying, wow, this is $30,000, $40,000 for 1 month to an outside contractor or vendor. And then I look in the yard, and we'd have 5 vans sitting there. So I said, this isn't rocket science. We need to hire more drivers. So we went on a campaign to hire more drivers. We hired 7 drivers in the first 90 days. We reduced the contract vendors down to basically 2. Of those 2, they only had 1 route each. We brought everything else in-house. In addition to that, we decided at the time that one of the problems I had is we have all these new drivers, and all of a sudden we have all these vans on the road, but I really had no way of tracking them. We were using a cell phone-based tracking system that I don't know how many years it had been there. The problem was most of the drivers didn't want to carry 2 phones, a company phone and their own phone, and of course these weren't smartphones, they were flip phones. And the technology for the GPS tracking back then was cellular-based, it wasn't satellite-based. So there was always a lag. The service was intermittent. We went to a hardwired set-based tracking system, and it was really kind of simple. We ordered the devices through our current carrier at the time, and they actually plug into the data port in the vehicle. So we didn't have to spend a lot of money wiring up or anything. My maintenance director, Rich Fraser, who's also one of our drivers, within probably 2 days, 3 days, had them all equipped. And he was able to set them up right from his cell phone. The benefit to this is that we now can track the mileage in the vehicle from our computer at the office, oil change interval. We can run diagnostics on the engines. So we really know everything about the vehicle now. And by getting rid of the cell phone-based component of it, we brought the bill from almost $1,200 a month to about $430, $440. So we got new technology at about a third of the cost. And what it can do is just incredible. One of the other things that we had to do was the registry was requiring effective 2018 changes to the 7D program. The 7D program is the program that applies to the licensure for the van drivers, not the bus drivers. The bus drivers are actually CDL drivers who have a bus endorsement, a passenger endorsement, and a student endorsement. But the 7D is a standalone program. I think the registry, in their wisdom, decided that it would be better to try and professionalize the 7D licensure environment more. By doing so, effective October of 2018, after October 1st, every driver would have to have 2 hours of pre-service training before they could even take the test. So basically, we had to figure a way to accomplish the training. So STAM, which is an acronym that stands for the School Bus Transportation Association of Massachusetts, in conjunction with the registry, came up with a program to certify drivers as trainers. So again, we got Rich Frazier, who was our resident driver and maintenance person, to go to the STAM courses, and was not only certified as a 7D trainer, but he was also certified as a CDL bus trainer. So now he can train everybody that comes into the department. In addition to that, effective October 1st of this year, basically a week ago, the drivers to renew their 7D license have to have 8 hours of recurrent training in the 12 months starting October 1, 2019. So Richard is now certified to do all of that training. So we normally have a pre-service meeting in August. We had it, I think it was the 26th of August. And at that time, after the meeting, we kept the drivers there. Richard gave them 2 hours of training that day, since we had the whole group together. And then the rest of the training he does is individual, one-on-one. And we've complied with it, but it was something I think we were very proactive on. He went to the STAM course back in, I think it was March. And so he has all the certifications, the training's accomplished. We have all the training records on site. And one little aside to that is that I took over January 2nd. I think it was on or about February 1st, the Registry of Motor Vehicles came in to do a base inspection of the Norwood Public School Transportation System, which had never happened.
Oh, no.
So the first thing they were asking me for was, where the logs or books on the bus driver's training, and like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. So I had Richard come in, and Richard said, we used to use a contract vendor for that, a contractor. And it took us about 48 hours to find out that these books were at his house. Oh, so, I mean, we've streamlined all that. We brought it in-house. It's sitting right behind my desk. And, I look at it weekly. Richard looks at it daily. Richard has developed computer programs now so that we can call up any of our drivers, see what their status is, whether their license is good, not good, when it needs to be renewed, their medical status, their training status, and so forth. So we've come out of that dark era. As I mentioned, we did order 2 new wheelchair vehicles, which were promised to me 7 weeks out from around the 6th of July, and as of a week ago, they're still 6 weeks out. Oh, no. So we check on them weekly, but I don't know when they're coming in. They're saying that Ford had a problem providing them with chassis, but we're following up on that. Another thing that we really didn't have was a rolling stock replacement program for the vehicles. I understand the program started in 2009, and we're still driving a bunch of 2009 vehicles with 180,000 miles on it. And the thing is, if you don't start looking out 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden, these vehicles are going to get 250,000 miles on it. From February through the middle of May, we had to replace 5 transmissions. Wow. To the tune of about $3,000 a piece. One of them was in one of the 2 remaining wheelchair vans, one of which had about 160,000 miles on it. And the last thing I wanted to do was spend over $3,000 on a van that was a 2009, but we didn't have a choice. So I think you can probably see the need for a rolling stock replacement program. We don't want to get it all at once, so what we need to do is try to get 2 or 3 new vehicles a year and, just keep the stock rolling. We also, as part of the new bus contract with Conley, one of the prerequisites was that they have a routing program. So they purchased one called Traversa, which we spent pretty much the whole summer training on with Conley. And one of the interesting things that happened is that after you develop all the routes, set up all the routes and bus stops with this program, you can hit one button which optimizes the route. It moves the stops around and everything else. So when we got through building them, and Conley, of course, had been doing this for a number of years, they had optimized and nothing changed. So they're pretty good at doing what they're doing with regard to the bus stops and everything. I mean, it was just amazing. I went over the upcoming changes to the 7D licensure, and with regard to the large bus status, I'll turn it over to Karen because she's got some things she'd like to talk about on that.
As Al said, Connolly is the contractor that has the bus bid. It's the first year of a 3-year contract. We have 16 buses that are all housed at the middle school. Currently, we're using 13 of them. And since the buses are housed in Norwood, one little perk is that Connolly pays excise tax to the town of Norwood for the buses, so you do get a little bit of perk for that. As I said, the contract allows you to go up and down with the number of buses used depending on your needs. You're only charged for the number of buses used. The cost per bus is $381 per bus per day. So if you wanted to add another bus, just to give you an idea of the cost, one bus per year would be about $68,580. The late buses, they currently run 4 late buses for 130 days per year. That's Monday through Thursday at the middle school only. The cost is $48 per bus per day, so $6,240 for one bus. The contract does not specify the latest time for the bus, the late bus, so that is not in the contract, the time. I did talk to Connolly. The buses, when they're doing the late buses, the rest of the buses are handling the elementary runs. But you do also have those 3 additional buses that are at the middle school because you're only using 13 of the 16. If you did want to add a late bus to the high school, you do have the buses available. I did talk to Connolly about the last time they had a high school late bus. It was almost like 10 years ago, right, Al?
Yep.
And the reasoning for stopping it was there was not a lot of usage with that late bus. Do you want to go over the cameras now, or do you want to do a little bit more first? And then
Yeah,
we'll
I'll
go
do a
over
little more,
the
and then we'll go
cameras.
over the cameras. The next thing that I had on the status was really the areas that I think we can improve in. One is, of course, we went out and we spent all this time and effort training and hiring drivers, but because of the economy currently, retention has become an issue. And every town around us is starting to offer them wage increases, benefits, which never really existed for drivers, et cetera. I enclosed in your packets just a representative agreement that another town had with their drivers. I think that when you look at the cost of contracting out a special education student today, the cost is running around $185 a day per student. And I think that, again, retaining the drivers, trying to keep this program in-house, the savings are just immense. So to spend all that time and effort trying to hire drivers and then potentially lose them because they jump ship is an issue. I know it's an issue, but it's just something for your consideration. I think just like the registry right now is trying to professionalize the 7D driving programs, I think maybe we have to step up to the plate and try and professionalize our relationship with the drivers. I see that as an issue, and it's not as much the wage as it is all the other things. I mean, they come in, they get ready to go, and it's a snow day. They don't drive, but they're in there getting their van ready, and they don't get paid for it. And there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of ouches. And currently, they get no minimums. So when you have one route that's only an hour and a half in the morning or 2 hours, and a guy's coming in for, an hour and a half's pay. And one of the things we've done to try and alleviate that is, if you looked at our route structure right now, we've got guys that are actually on the road at 5:45 in the morning. They may be doing McKinney-Vento students from Boston, so they're in Boston at 6:30, 5:45, bringing that child out to one of our elementary schools. But once they get that child back in the district, we do a route. So, we've tried to combine routes like that to, number one, utilize the driver better, but number two, to alleviate this coming in for an hour and a half thing. The flip side of that is some of these guys are tired. We need more drivers, and it's just difficult hiring drivers right now. We did start 2 new drivers this week. We've got hopefully another new driver that will be starting in about 2 or 3 weeks. But again, to spend all that time and effort, I think that it's going to require us stepping up to the plate to maybe formalize our relationship a little bit more. With regard to even the employee manual they have, which probably goes back 10 years, there isn't much in the way of policy, guidance, the who, what, when, where, hows. So every time they ask me about something, I'm like, I don't know, and I pull out a look and say, well, it doesn't speak to it. So, there's a lot of winging it going on, but I think it would be much more professional if the guidelines were there.
I'd just like to add a little bit to that. It is very difficult to find drivers, and I did a lot of cost analysis in my last job. And even if you add the benefits, it's still a substantial savings over going out to contract outside vendor. And then a lot of the drivers that you get in are retirees that aren't even needing of the benefits. They already have their retirement benefits.
Yeah,
not all of them, but
a lot of them do. They don't require maybe the medical or whatever. But again, when it gets down to paid holidays or a snow day or something like that, I think that's something we could look at. It just take a little bit of the sting out of it. The only other thing that I'm going to mention right now before I turn it over to Karen is that almost on a daily, if not weekly basis, I'll get a call that something happened on a van or something happened on a bus. And for me, I interview the driver. If there's a monitor, I interview the driver in the monitor. The parent has already lodged the complaint, and now I have to investigate it. It's a he said, she said. I listen to everything. I try and piece everything together, but I really can't tell what happened. There's not much I can do, which brings us into the subject that I was talking to Karen about, which really is cameras on the vehicles for our own protection. At least if we had a camera and an incident did happen, we could download the information right away, even if it wasn't live, and pretty much figure out what happened. But right now, I almost my hands are tied. I don't know what I don't know what to tell the parent. I don't know what to tell the driver. Anyway, I'll let Karen talk to you about that.
So we did have a discussion on the cameras. There are no cameras on the regular ed buses, the large buses. They can be added to the buses, but it would be an additional cost to the district. But I did have a really nice discussion with Connolly, and they indicate that they would offer to buy the cameras, spread the cost over the 3 years of the contract, so it would just be an additional line on your bill. And to do that, the camera cost is $1,355 per bus, a total of $17,615 for the total of all the 13 buses. So that was spread over the 3 years to be about $5,871.67 per year. Al and I went over his transportation budget. We also went over his estimate of his actual for the year. And after discussing with Al, we both feel pretty confident that he has a line, his cellular service line in his transportation budget. That would be a good area to do a budget transfer out if you did want to buy those cameras. I think you'd be fine and be able to do that. Has savings in that line because of all the changes he's done with the cell phones and the different services, he has some money in there. So that would be both of our recommendations on that if you did want to buy the cameras. For the special education vans, it's a little bit different. You have a lot of vans. I did speak to a couple of my business manager friends, and the consensus was you really don't want to put those cameras in anything over 3 years. So maybe that's a good way to start implementing the cameras on your vans. Again, looking at the budget and the estimate of his actual, we're thinking maybe we might be able to sustain like 3 of those cameras this year, and put them on some of the newer vans, and Al would pick which van that he thought needed the camera, that'll be a top priority for the camera. And then maybe in the future, we could, figure out some sort of a plan to start getting them in all the vans. But to put them in the older vans just doesn't seem like a very good plan. But we figure 3 years, anything, 3 years or better. So that's the 2 recommendations we make on that. The $3,000 is about what it would be for the 3 cameras in the special education vans. And again, $5,871.67 would be the cost to have your cameras in all your 13 regular ed vans. All right. There are no laws right now requiring those cameras, but as Al said, it's something that we both feel that it would be a good investment.
Yeah, Karen, not to interrupt you, but Karen just got some numbers before the meeting from Connolly, so you don't have all the figures she just read off, and that's why, but she does have it and she can share it with us, so if we want to request that in, like a formal proposal for the next meeting, we can. This information just came in before the meeting.
Oh,
yeah.
actually, I was going to ask, can we request this to town meeting, or is it something that falls completely within our budget?
It would, well, town meetings, the warrant time is closed, but.
Right, but I'm saying the next one.
I mean, technically, we could ask for it in the capital campaign, but there's a long list of capital needs.
Sure.
And if we truly could figure out how to do it in our budget, we probably should first.
Of course.
So,
one other thing on that, because the cameras would be on the buses, so at the end of the 3-year contract, the cameras would go with the buses. So and the way, when I was speaking to the fellow from Connolly, he indicated that at the end of your contract, you're probably going to get new buses with new cameras. So at that time, when you go out to bid, you want to put that in your new bid that you would like to require the cameras in them. So.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to table and request that formal proposals come for both the benefits and the cameras on both the buses and the vans, and to consider it when those proposals come out.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Sorry,
That's
just one thing.
Cameron.
In terms of the proposals for benefits, where does that put us in terms of the agreement with the town, in terms of adding benefited positions?
well, I don't think we're talking about healthcare. I think we're talking about sick days or personal days or things along that line. So that would be totally under our.
So if we could get just exactly within that proposal.
Cost analysis, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Motion seconded.
Now we need to vote.
Oh, I thought we did. Sorry. But then Laura, that's right, sorry. Sorry, guys. My brain is like not working correctly. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Can I just ask one question though? Bus passes. How are we doing? How many have we sold, and how much revenue have we brought in, and how does that compare to our budget?
That's our next section.
Oh, okay.
Ashley?
Well, you start and then I can.
I'll let you do that.
finish it.
Well, again, this is my first year in this job, and just coming from the private sector, when I look at this whole bus pass program, I mean, it just, it's taken way too much time, way too much effort. There's so many people involved, but basically Marie, my assistant, has to enter each and every one of these applications after we meet with the people at the window and explain to them distance from the school, whether they're reduced, free, or whatever, explain what's, we get it filled out, they give us payment. Then it all has to be entered into a financial program they have called OASIS. from the OASIS program, Marie not only does the data entry for each and every one of these applications, but she actually assigns the bus. After that's done, she transfers that information into Aspen. And when you're talking well over 1,000 passes, and probably 2/3 of them, we didn't even start doing till, I mean, they didn't even start coming in till middle of August. We're setting up the fall routes. The drivers, we get the drivers meeting coming up, we're trying to assign, it's just overwhelming. I think that the cutoff should be moved forward, and personally, I'd like to look at some more streamlined method to do this. It's just, I just can't even believe that she gets them done. I just can't believe it. You know,
Because Deb has been helping her as well, and
yeah,
they've both been overwhelmed.
After Marie does the entry into the OASIS program, then it's turned over to Debbie,
Deb.
who generates the bus passes themselves. So it's not like a one-step process. It's from the window or online to Marie, to the OASIS program, to Aspen, and then OASIS transfer over to Debbie for the actual printing, if you will, of the bus passes. It just seems, I mean, when you're talking well over 1,000 bus passes, I mean, it just takes a lot of time.
And that comes to the number of bus passes to date is 1065, of which 79 were free and 257 reduced. The revenue, I forgot to write down how much the revenue was, but the revenue is enough to sustain. You did a offset for the school transportation bus contract, so the revenue taken in so far covers that offset.
Great.
So you're good with that.
Karen, could you just repeat those numbers, the bus passes?
1,065.
Yep.
79 were free, 257 reduced.
Thank you.
The cost, I don't know if you want to know the cost of the bus passes. The full is 275 plus a $25 admin fee, so 300. The family cap is 750. The reduced varies upon the income, and extended days pays 150 for theirs. Okay.
And that's if they just need the one-way to extended day. But if the kid already bought a regular bus pass, that can get them to extended day.
I think it's a great idea to look at ways to streamline this process. I've been hearing that it's a problem for years, and I'm fully in favor of streamlining. But I also think that this is potentially an area where we could look at the senior work-off program and see if we can get some support, because it's a short-term. I mean, it's an enormous amount of work, but it's all concentrated in July and August and September, right? So it seems like it's kind of thing where it
See,
might make
the other thing too is if we had an earlier cutoff, once we've got the summer route set up, our workload's a little lighter. And if the cutoff was earlier, we probably could get it done earlier if we had it in our hands.
Yeah, I think you could do an earlier cutoff. I also think that we could do more to advertise, to remind people that the cutoff, like that discount date is coming up. Because I think I missed it this year. I was not the only one, I imagine.
But also to be more clear that there is a cutoff, because that's not the way it reads right now. It's like, okay, well, if I want the discount, get it in by then. Otherwise, I'll get to it when I get to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, if I could just follow up where I've been before, the cutoff was June 1st for the discount. If they did not have it in by June 30th, they did not get a bus pass until after all bus routes were done for the fall. So, because of exactly that reason. So this is kind of another example of trying to do a system on the cheap, on the inexpensive instead of the effective, which is something we need to look at. And again,
Your phone call generated a lot of interest this morning.
Yeah. Well, again, everybody waits for the phone call that says we're going to be checking bus passes. Then there's a second wave because there is no penalty after the initial penalty, or so. And it needs to be a significant, $50, and then if you're late, $50, $100 difference. And if you don't have it in by June 30th. We're not guaranteeing you a seat on the bus, and that includes kids that are free or not. So every kid's handed a bus form at end of May. Get it in, beginning of May. Get it in by the beginning of June. Otherwise, and end of June, we're not guaranteeing you a seat, so, because it is a nightmare, and this is the first time Al's really seen it, so.
One of the other problems we've had too is because the cutoff is so late, the end of the first week of school, we're getting complaints that this bus is overcrowded, that bus is overcrowded. We can't even check bus passes because probably 30–40% of the people on the bus haven't even got a bus pass yet.
Right.
So if the cutoff was earlier, we could legitimately check everybody's passes. And I mean, just the other day, we found out that 20 people going from the Prescott to extended day had never even applied for a bus pass. And I've been sending a van there every day to pick up the overflow because the Conley bus is full. I've driven it myself because we just can't move the kids.
Wow.
Right, so we need to tighten the system.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add how wonderful Al is. I've only been here for a short time, but I can tell right away how wonderful he is, so I appreciate it, Al.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to work with him.
I'd like to add to that. So, Al's been here less than a year. He's already rearranged bus routes, saved us significant amounts of money with contracting out, hired a ton of bus drivers, and really been thoughtful and strategic about running that section. So, and it is noticed and appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice job.
And he happily comes to our school start time task force. Great ideas as well. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
So we're going to just switch something really quickly. Ms. West, sorry to keep you waiting so long, but if you will join us, we're going to talk about the ELA pilot update.
Thank you again for your patience.
It's past my bedtime. Oh, is there a, you have it?
Yeah. Hopefully it'll work from there.
All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for inviting me to give you a little update on our ELA pilot. I also just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for funding my position. I don't have to tell all of you that it's an exciting time to be in Norwood, and I feel really fortunate to be in this role supporting teachers and running a model alongside Jill Milton and the strong model that she's built in math. And so I'm excited to be here, and I'm loving my job, and I'm really feeling very fortunate. So I'm going to give you a little update on our ELA pilot that we are about 4 weeks into. This is a much-needed curriculum that will help us to create equitable educational experiences for all of our kids. It will also help us to align instruction K to 5. And it will help us to continue shifting our teaching to meet the needs of the Common Core and the complex ways that we're asking kids to think about and speak about texts. So the work is built upon some of the work, all of the work that was led by Dr. Wyeth and Diane Ferreira of the ELA committee last year. And in that committee, the district, it was made up of members of the whole district, and they came up with a vision statement, which is basically that we are seeking a program that helps students to become more skillful and thoughtful readers, writers, speakers, and listeners. And also through that committee, they identified some core values or some key components that they were hoping for in an ELA curriculum, which includes obviously differentiated instruction that meets the needs of not only all of our learners, but every single one of our learners. A program that has engaging content and gets kids excited about reading and writing. A writing component that's connected directly to the text. A program that we can also use with our Foundations program, which is our phonics program, K to 2. And a program that has a digital component when we're thinking about preparing students in a world of technology. And so through all of that work, they identified 3 strong pilot programs, which are the following: Wonders from McGraw-Hill, My View from Pearson, and Reach for Reading from National Geographic. I've pulled a little blurb from each of their websites, but basically all of the programs have an approach that has a core text that the whole class will interact with, and then there's a component of small group instruction. In addition to that, all of the curriculums have a project-based learning component, usually at the end of a unit, which I know is also something that's in our strategic plan and something that we're hoping to incorporate into our curriculum more. Each of the programs have writing connected to text, not only in response to reading, but also process writing. So writing after you've read a text, and then also writing like a narrative or an informational piece of writing. And after the programs were identified, then Dr. Wyeth and Diane Ferreira identified the teams of teachers to teach each of the pilots. And we have a unique model here where we essentially have every single grade level represented in the pilot, and we also have each of the pilots represented in all of the buildings. So you can see that there's a Wonders program at the Balch in 2nd grade, and then there's a MyView program at the Callahan in 2nd grade, and then there's the Reach for Reading program at the Oldham in the 2nd grade. So we have all 2nd grade teachers teaching each of the three programs. And then within one school, like the Balch, you can see that there's each of the programs within that school. So this is a unique model. Over 60% of our classrooms at the elementary school level are involved in the pilots, which includes over 900 students. So it is a big pilot in scope. And I'm going to take a little moment here to plug the teachers and say that they need to be commended because of all the work that they are putting into this. And there's obviously many teachers, and not only classroom teachers, but special education teachers, reading specialists, ELL teachers, principals. Everyone is deeply engaged in this and is doing a great job. So our timeline, in addition to having a big scope of a pilot, we also have a fairly quick timeline. Last year, during the school year, is when they spent a majority of the time building knowledge and finding programs to pilot. And starting the very first professional development day in September, we were providing professional development to all the pilot teachers directly from the vendors. That's continued even up until our PD day next week. We've used about 10 hours of the PD calendar towards this pilot so far. And so teachers have about 12 weeks of instruction in this pilot. And then in December, we are hoping to make a recommendation and be able to purchase the materials. That leaves the spring, where we are dedicated and committed to finding more professional development time to be able to train all of the teachers before the program's fully implemented in the fall of 2020. And then just a little bit about our process so far. So as I mentioned, we have had already 3 to 6 hours of PD from the experts who are the vendors. In addition, teachers are really taking advantage of this new common planning time. So they're using that common planning time to collect feedback, observational feedback, and to have conversations about what's going well. They have a note catcher that's kind of split up into maybe 5 sections where they're taking notes on each of them. We started off with a wider, broader view of just how's it going? How are you using the materials? What's the usability like? And then eventually, by mid-November, we want them to really be thinking about how is this targeting your students in the most need of support? And specifically looking at the writing instruction. What do you think about the writing instruction and some of those components that we think are really important? And I've been meeting with almost all of the pilot teachers so far. So we've looked at the note catchers. I've just tried to answer as many questions as I can. Done a lot of calming down and helping teachers to feel like you can't do it all right now. I think Margot had mentioned that teachers want to do everything perfect, and these teachers are really trying to do this with 100% fidelity and with the best intentions. And it's messy, and sometimes it's hard as a teacher to hear that it's a little bit messy, but they're doing great so far. Additionally, we will have some pilot meetings, so we're asking teachers to meet after school a few times to start to have conversations across the pilots, so that the 2nd grade in one building who's doing one pilot can talk with the 2nd grade in another building to say what are the strengths of your program, and start to kind of build strengths and needs or strengths and weaknesses for each program so that we can get to a place where we're able to make a recommendation. In late November and December, in addition, I'm also asking principals to be creative about allowing teachers to have the opportunity to see the programs within their school. And hopefully, if we're able to have teams of teachers see the programs across schools. It's a little bit hard, for instance, if you're a first grade teacher at the Oldham and you want to go see fifth grade, it's a little bit hard to think about how that program might look in first grade. It would be a lot easier for those first grade teachers to go see another program in first grade. So we'll have to be creative about that because teachers never want to be out of their classrooms. But I think that it will be really beneficial if we are able to kind of get some of those going. And then in late November, early December, teachers will be asked to complete a quantitative rubric. So the state of Massachusetts through the DESE already has a rubric that's called Curate, and we'll use a modified version of that will basically ask teachers to assign a score to certain components so that we can start to get some sort of numbers to be able to compare rather than just our observational data. And that is our process. That was a very quick overview. Like I said, we're only about 4.5 weeks in, and there's been a lot going on so far. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Where were you before joining us?
Immediately, I was in Waltham, and prior to that, I also worked in Milton. Waltham underwent the same process over the few years that I was there, so it all feels a little familiar to me.
Are there other questions for Ms. West?
But thank you so much for this update.
Thank you.
And thank you. I know that you kind of came into the process that was already started in the spring, and that can be a little tricky to navigate. But I had a chance to meet with Stephanie yesterday one-on-one, and I have full confidence that you bring great expertise. And I really look forward to hearing next steps from you and the rest of the ELA committee.
Yep. No, I'd like to thank Stephanie as well publicly because you really jumped into the lake full completely and done a nice job. So thank you for that. Yep.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I have kids in the district, and so it's just really exciting for me to be here. I'm already invested in our literacy instruction here in Norwood, and now I'm invested in even a deeper way. So I'm excited, and I will be back, I'm sure, in a few months to let you know where we stand.
And hopefully much earlier than what we got you in tonight. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
So just to take the pulse of the committee, because I know it's late, I know we have a lot left. Dr. Wyeth, if we do not get to the presentation on the accountability system tonight, are you okay bumping that to the next one?
Yeah, I am, and I think that'd probably be a wise move because it's kind of heavy and
So you and I should just
Depending
connect
on-
because I know that
yeah.
kind of changes on the next couple of meetings and then things that we are going to have and present on. But what we should definitely cover tonight is the ELL staffing, a quick joint facilities committee update. We have to finish the discussion of Dr. Thompson's raise, which I think should be rather quickly. And then I know there is an MOU that needs to be done tonight.
Yep.
Is that okay with the committee if we make those changes? Okay. So on to the ELL staffing report.
So maybe, Dr. Thompson, I can ask you to
Click.
just, please.
I can click.
While he's getting that set up, can I just give you guys the joint facilities update?
Yeah, sure.
We're meeting again the last week in October.
Great.
Okay. Okay.
That's really all I have to say. I hoped to have a little bit more in the way of budget projections to share with you tonight, but I don't have it done yet, so.
Okay.
We'll be done soon.
Well done. Okay. Quick and easy. Thank you, Maya.
We should do all the presentations.
And do we want to talk about the superintendent raise?
Yeah, let's get that done.
I would like to make a motion to give Dr. Thompson a 2.5% raise, which is similar to the rest of the employees in the district and was already in the budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
You make me sweat.
Sorry, was that unanimous?
Yes.
Yes, it's unanimous. That's the nice piece of old business. We can figure that a little bit quicker than the appearances in new business.
Yeah, so we have just a couple of visuals up here for you that I think you have in your packet already regarding just some of the statistics around our ELL enrollments and our current staffing situation and caseloads and the number of level 1 and level 2 students in the district and sort of how those numbers have really gone up over the years. So I won't go over the whole memo, with you, but I'm really here to answer any questions you may have. Basically, in a nutshell, I've met with all the ELL teachers and with the principals around this issue. It really came crashing in at us with the fall enrollments. Much of this was unanticipated, and hopefully you can kind of see that in the enrollment sheet. And I've highlighted in sort of orange there where we have the critical our critical points: Balch, Coakley Middle School, Willett, and the Oldham, where the enrollments just jumped up. From 66. If you look, whoops, I actually have a little pointer here. This is there we go. Thank you. There's Balch. So you've got 66 last year, jumped up to 96, and then jumped up to 109, and even since October 1, it's jumped up to 111. So, this is just a huge increase, and similar kind of patterns for the Coakley, right? 23, 23, 41, and now it's at 42, and Willett, 59, 71, 71, and the Oldham, what do we have there? 53, 43, 30, 30. I'm sorry, that's 14, 17, 29, and 30. So it went from 79, basically, 17 to 30. And you can see at the bottom here the percentage increases reflected there. And also here is our ESL teacher FTEs over the years. Right now we're at 10. And so, Dave, if you want to flip to the other proposed ESL staffing piece. Well, we can go over that now since that's sort of next in the queue. And so an important thing to take into consideration here is in looking at the numbers, because some of the numbers may seem low in some respects, but the population is a very demanding, needy kind of population. So our number of level 1 and level 2s, and I've got the definition there for each level. These are students who know and use minimal social language and minimal academic language, even with visual and graphic support. So these are basically our high need kind of kids who don't have the background as some of the others do that are at level 3, 4, and 5. So they just demand more time and attention, and in fact the regulations really say we need to provide more time and attention, and that's another part that's in the packet that I'll get to. But so you can see how these numbers have gone up over the years from 2013 to 2020, and we're at 84 here at level 1. That's up from 49, so that's a tremendous jump in 1 year. And level 2, we were around 90 this year, and that's up from 83, 64, 48, 26. So you can see the pattern here, that we've got a lot more kids coming in with less language background. This is just to show you how we're doing. I won't spend too much time on this, but our staff have been doing really good work with getting these kids to making progress. This is sort of the district number. So they're doing well, but in terms of the accountability, they've declined over last year's target. So I think that may be an indicator too that we just need more staff to provide more time on learning for these students. And we should see, hopefully, that accountability will go back up to meeting the targets as opposed to declining from those targets. What's next up there? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. So if you look at basically the back of, I thought there was one more, the proposed ESL staffing caseloads. I guess, did that not get in there? You have it in your packet, okay. So in the packet, you can kind of see some of those number of level 1 and level 2 numbers reflected in the second column there in your packet. And you can see where the hot spots are. Again, it's Willett, Balch, and Oldham, given our current FTEs. And so what we're proposing is a 2.5 increase in ESL staffing. And the way that would be distributed, would there be basically a 1.0 at Willett, an additional 0.5 at Balch, so the Willett would increase from 1.5 currently to 2.0. Okay, yeah. And then Balch would go from a 2.0 to a 3, and the Oldham would go from a 0.5 to a 1. So there's basically so that's where you're going to move from the 10.0 to the 12.5. And there's some, we want to try to utilize a staff member who is already a 0.5 and increase her, if she's willing, to a 0.1. That saves the health and benefits for the district. And, you know, I haven't heard back if she's willing to do that yet, but that's certainly something that would help us financially. The Coakley Middle School, I should talk to a little bit about that, because what Margot had to do this year due to the increase in numbers that she experienced there was that she had to take her literacy teacher, who's also an ESL certified teacher, and assign her to basically ESL classes. And what that meant is, that memo from her was in your packet, meant is that a lot of students, about 20, or is it 35 students, are not getting literacy support services that we would like to provide them. So instead, she's using her professional resource to provide ESL services instead of literacy services. So what we'd like to do is to recoup that, and that would basically, you see that sort of reflected there as an ESL of ESL teacher, a 0.5 ESL teacher, in order to recoup that. I guess I'm happy to take questions and try to do the best I can to answer them based on the information you have in front of you. But it is kind of where we are, and it is a critical need. And there we are.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I mean, you say it very clearly at the bottom of this proposed ESL, ELL staffing, that we need an additional 2.5 ESL teachers to come into compliance with state and federal regulations and meet increased needs at Balch, Oldham, and CMS. We don't actually have a choice, because right now we're currently out of compliance with state and federal regulations.
Right, and I provided in your memo the actual recommendations for the amount of time per student, and so where we are with that is we're basically providing half of that recommended time.
So, I mean, it's something that we have to do, but I guess my question is, this to me feels like another reason why we have to change the way we do registrations.
Yes, I agree it will help. I don't know if it would solve all of this.
I'm not saying it would solve it, but I suspect it would have given us more of a heads up that this might be coming.
We might have been a little earlier with it, but the other problem is we need to test all those kids to figure out what level they're at, which would not have started until, and there was so many at level 1 and level 2, which takes longer to test. So it's been, you know, I mean, the number is not, if you look at just the number, but it's the number and the levels that has taken the air out of the sail.
I just want to comment on something that Dr. Wyeth clearly put in the memo to us, but I want people to understand, because we've been asked, by the town to use all of their funding first, and we as a district try to be, efficient and effective in how we're using our resources. So I just want to read something in here for everybody. So our limited Title III grant, which is $55,500, does not allow us to hire certified ESL teachers. We cannot use that grant for this purpose. And we have tried to meet our increasing EL needs over the last few years by using the grant to hire aides. However, this approach is no longer adequate. ESL aides help facilitate and support the classes, but they are not certified ESL teachers and cannot provide the ELs with the high quality instruction needed to make the progress per the law. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Right, yeah, no, thank you, yeah, because the people think, well, why not just put more aides in there, and it's not like, it's not even comparable to what we can do with special education. The aides are helpful, they can provide some instructional assistance, but ESL is an entirely different ballgame. You have to have a certified ESL teacher to work with these kids, especially at level 1 and level 2. The aides can be helpful with level 4 and level 5 kids, but not at the lower levels.
Are there other funding, so we have a limited grant, are there other funding sources out there, not obviously for this, solving this need, but more in the future?
For ESL?
For hiring ESL, is there another revenue source besides that we can go
I
after?
mean, the new funding formula from the state is identifying these higher needs students, some of which are ESL, but it's not going to cover all of it. It will help a little bit going forward, and the more numbers we have and identified, the more it doesn't help us this year. It will help us in next year's projections.
Right, and I mean, that could be one of your legislative kind of priorities,
Right,
is to
right.
talk to folks in the state government and saying, look, these numbers are going up, they're not going down, they're going to continue to go up probably, and it's a good thing. We're getting kids from different countries, and it adds to the richness of our community. But we need some support, state support for this, as we do for, increases in special education. We've got the circuit breaker tool there that helps us with that. We have nothing for ELL kids.
Right.
And in terms of legislative priorities, I did forward, I think at the end of last week to all of you, something from the MASC, because I wasn't sure if you saw it, and their official statement on the proposed changes to education and how they felt that it was insufficient. So I would recommend you take a look at that, and we can always talk again about a committee if we want to do something to advocate or write something. Where are we on this issue tonight? Does anybody want to make a motion?
It's legally required motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
Have we identified where the funding's going to come from?
My hope is that we will see some. I mean, there's about 50,000 because we had to hire 2 aides last time we were together. Hopefully, we're done with hiring extra people because of needs coming in. But there's about 50,000 there, and then hopefully throughout the year, monitoring our salary line, we can find most of it, and we might have to transfer some money at the end. If you remember last year, and not that I'm encouraging our quality teachers to take leaves, we did have a good number of maternity leaves, and that meant we hired people to replace them at less money. We did see some savings there last year, maybe we will this year, but it's something we're going to have to watch going forward.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The ELL staff will be most appreciative, I can assure you. This, they've been stretched very, very thin.
Okay. The MOU, you want me to
Yes,
start on that?
please.
So,
That'd be great.
if you will remember, we had that state grant, the Bright Grant, that helped pay for a adjustment counselor and a nurse. Am I missing one? LMPA. Oh, the nurse at the LMPA, right. But those are grant-funded positions. If you remember from our contracts, grant-funded positions are in Unit 50, but they're positions that are normally in Unit A. So in front of us, Unit A, Unit 50, and myself sat down and we hammered out a temporary agreement to allow those two people who are grant funded to be in Unit A and not in Unit 50.
I'm assuming this has been reviewed by our attorney?
It actually, I have not sent it to the attorney, but there's nothing, it's just an agreement to allow them to be in another unit.
Okay. And this is something we have done before for grant-funded positions.
We have not done it for, I don't know the history of that. I don't believe we have. But these are definitely positions that are normally put in Unit A.
What do you mean by normally? Like as in other towns or within our own district?
A nurse, a little bit of both, actually. Our contract in the clause in the beginning, I can't remember the name of the recognition clause. Thank you. I'm glad Mrs. Smith is here to keep me. It's after 10. That's why I shut down. In that names nurses and the positions that are and the adjustment counselors, the positions that are here are in the Unit A recognition clause, but then in the Unit B recognition clause it says all grant funded positions. So there's a conflict there. There's no salary scale in Unit 50 for a nurse or an adjustment counselor because they don't normally go in there because those are funded. But long story short, having that kind of unit that only has grant-funded positions in it is peculiarly Norwood.
But the conflict will still exist, right?
Right, but they're agreeing to forego the conflict.
To agree to an exception to the rule for
Right.
these two particular people.
Right. Right, and we're going to be entering into, we're finishing, as you know, negotiations with Unit 50 and entering negotiations with Unit A.
So the positions of school nurse and adjustment counselor are usually in Unit A.
Yeah.
Because they're now being paid for by a grant, they should, as grant funded, be in Unit 50, but we want to get them into Unit A because of the position. And this is all parties coming together saying they will make this exception and allow these two positions, even though grant funded, to be in Unit A.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes more sense.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Second it. Any further point of conversation? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain? Okay. So
Abstain.
4 with 1 abstention, Mara
I
abstained.
abstain.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we already agreed that we will move the presentation on accountability to our next meeting. So that brings us to the consent agenda, Dr. Thompson.
Yes, we have 3 donations, and if you don't mind, I'll introduce them. You can do one vote. Musical equipment from Mr. Matthew Lane. Roach Brothers, a $50 gift certificate for the Coakley Middle School. And A-plus school supplies, $322.10, a donation to Coakley Middle School.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Seconded.
Second by Dave.
So
All in
eager.
favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Donation, people.
Dr. Thompson, is there any personnel tonight?
There is not. Well, we did hire that ESL teacher, the part-time person who left after we hired the Prescott.
Okay.
That's sitting at my table.
We'll share more next time.
I will share more next time.
Okay, great. So school committee agenda, Joan?
None at this time.
Laura?
None at this time.
Me either.
Very quickly, we asked for the override, we got the funding, and that's why we have these great long meetings where we're seeing excellent work everyone's doing with the access to more funding and programming.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that really quickly, I know this is a long night and a lot of work for us at this table, but this is just a small representation of what our staff is doing. And I especially tonight want to acknowledge the elementary team, because if you think about everything we're rolling out, a lot of it is on their backs. It's the ELA committee, it's the social studies committee that is starting soon, it is the SEL work, it is the Renaissance work. our elementary teachers are doing a lot right now, and I just want them to know that we acknowledge it and appreciate it.
Awesome.
So I do believe that we have to go into executive session.
Yes, quickly, shortly.
Okay. But we will be going into executive session and not reconvening tonight for any votes, correct?
Correct.
All right, so Cole, to go into executive session?
I make a motion to go into executive session for contract negotiations.
Here, then make a motion. Can't just say it. All right, now I will poll. Thank you. One day I will not miss this part of the meeting up. Joan, are you okay?
Yes.
Mara?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and me too. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.